Chapter 1. Early in the morning, the sky was slightly bright with white. The autumn and winter morning breeze blew across the sleeping farmstead, bringing with it the moist dew from the forest. The farmstead felt the cold air and couldn't help but turn over, murmuring a few words. Gradually, it became a little lively. The farmer woman who woke up early pushed open the wooden door and greeted her neighbors loudly. Everyone was preparing breakfast for their family. A new day was about to begin. This was a very normal morning, and this was also a very normal farmstead. However, there was a small interlude in this peaceful morning. Next to the well in the middle of the farmstead, the farmer woman who was about to draw water screamed, breaking the silence of the morning. Immediately, the commoners who heard the scream gathered. It turned out that next to the well made of bluestone, there was a young man in strange clothes, his face blue and lips white from the cold. Who is this? Why is he sleeping here? Could it be that he froze to death? Black hair? He should be a foreigner who came last night. Sigh, poor man. I hope he can return to the embrace of the God of light. There is no hunger or cold there, only warmth. The gathered commoners drew hand signs in front of their chests, mourning for the young man who seemed to have frozen to death. A little boy who was leaning on the farmer woman's thigh suddenly took a few steps back in fear. Mom, this big brother just moved. The child was short, so he immediately saw the big brother who had frozen to death twitch his nose. The surrounding villagers were shocked and took a step back. They looked at each other and felt a chill in their hearts. Finally, the old farmer who was wearing a small round black hat stood out and leaned over to check the young man's breathing. He sighed in relief. This child is still breathing. He didn't freeze to death. Oh, God of light, praise the God. The old farmer patted the young man's cheek. Young man, wake up, wake up. The young man shivered and slowly opened his long and narrow eyes. Perhaps it was because of the cold. The young man didn't say a word after opening his eyes. He just stared blankly at the surrounding villagers and shivered from time to time. Did he freeze to death? An outspoken peasant woman said. Before the surrounding farmers could respond, a gentle voice came from outside the crowd. What happened here? Oh, good morning, Father New York. The priest known as New York seemed to be very respected by the crowd, and the surrounding civilians quickly made way for him. A middle-aged man carrying a lunchbox walked in and greeted the farmers with a warm expression. After listening to the old farmer's story, Father New York looked at the curled-up youth. Yes, it is indeed quite cold, but fortunately, we have the blessing of God. After that, Father New York put down the wooden lunchbox in his hand and drew a gesture in front of his chest devoutly. A white light suddenly appeared and shone on the young man. The surrounding farmers looked at the warm, white light with excitement. They made hand gestures in front of them and chanted prayers to praise God. The young man who was illuminated by the warm light had his mouth agape. His eyes were wide open as he stared blankly at the scene before him. What is this? A portable bath tyrant? Also, why was the hair of the people around him yellow? What the hell is going on? After 10 seconds, the white light disappeared. Father New York smiled and said, Young man, how do you feel now? Warm. The young man answered subconsciously. That's good. Get up and move around. You will recover soon. After that, Father New York took out a piece of rye bread from the lunchbox and put it in Tangen's hand. After doing all this, Father New York greeted the surrounding farmers and walked out of the crowd. Praise God. Father New York is a good man with a heart full of light. Yes, at this time, is he going to the west of the village to deliver food to the old people who have no one to take care of them? The surrounding farmers were full of praise for the priest and told of his good deeds. After that, the crowd dispersed. After all, there were still many things to do in the morning. The young man in strange clothes hurriedly pulled the old farmer. Excuse me, where is this place? Is this Europe? The old farmer looked at the young man strangely. Europe? What is that? This is Little Rock Village in Bran Country. Bran Country? The young man was stunned and then asked carefully, Is this Earth? Earth? What kind of ball is that? No way, did I transmigrate? The young man held his head and muttered to himself. The young man was called Tangen. He had just graduated from university a month ago. As a university student of the new era, of course he would read web novels and fantasize about them. He was no stranger to the transmigration plot. But didn't they say that novels are all fictional? How'd I transmigrate? All right, how'd I transmigrate? Tang knocked his head and quickly remembered that ever since he graduated, he had not been able to find a job smoothly. Originally, there were so many university students nowadays that their value was severely devalued. It was difficult to find a good job after graduating from a famous university, not to mention the mediocre university where he was stationed in the mountains. Therefore, after running around the job market for a month, Tang was despised in all kinds of ways. He gave out a lot of resumes, but there were very few opportunities for the second interview. Later on, he simply submitted his resumes online. Although the replies were also very vague, at least he did not have to pay for the printing of resumes. Today, after he woke up, he turned on his old computer as usual. He logged into a large recruitment website and selected the keywords. He did not look at them carefully and chose all of them. He was ready to submit 200 electronic resumes first. However, just as he clicked to confirm, a game advertisement page popped up. Damn, they really know how to find places to put advertisements. Tang was about to click on the page when his eyes inadvertently swept across the advertising slogan of the game. Do you have the courage to reject this ordinary life? Frankly speaking, this advertisement was really ordinary. The slogan was also very uncreative. It was simply a scumbag. Even if those pages had nothing to do with the game itself, at least they cheated the young man's clicks. However, this advertising slogan successfully moved Tang in. Ordinary. Tang smiled bitterly. Sometimes, when he thought about the 20 years he had lived, he doubted the meaning of his existence. Tang was neither the second generation of a rich family nor the second generation of an official. He was born in an ordinary family. His parents were both workers. They gave Tang everything they could, provided for him to go to school, and raised him into an adult. During school, Tang, who looked ordinary, also had ordinary grades. He was the kind of person who would neither be praised nor scolded by the teachers. He did not have any special talents or outstanding performances, but he did not make any major mistakes either. He just quietly stayed at the edge of the teacher's line of sight. At the end of the semester, when the homeroom teacher gave his evaluation, he always wrote that this student was quiet and strictly abided by the school rules. However, his grades still needed to be improved. Then, he did not do well in the college entrance examination and went to a mediocre university step by step. During university, he made a few bad friends, found a girlfriend, learned to smoke, and got used to taking makeup exams. Usually, when he was not with his girlfriend, he would play games and read novels. Before graduation, his girlfriend broke up with him. His girlfriend confessed that she could not stand the dull life with him, which was like plain water without any passion. She said that when she thought about continuing like this, she only felt despair and suffocation. Isn't an ordinary life good? Tang did not understand. An ordinary life is good, but your ordinary life allows me to see what the next few decades will be like. It's too scary. I can't accept it. Also, this is a relationship, not a marriage, she said before leaving. Tang's heart was in pain at that time. He did not know what he did wrong. Thinking of his girlfriend's parting words, Tang subconsciously picked up the mouse and clicked yes. Well, if that's the case, then I choose to reject this ordinary life. The game data loaded by 1%, 2%. Tang, who came back to his senses, saw the loading progress bar and smiled bitterly. Forget it, it's just a game. I'll play it. Seeing that the data still needed some time to load, Tang returned to the previous web page and submitted his resume. He got up and poured a glass of water for himself. When Tang returned to the computer, the game had already loaded 95%. Oh, the server is not bad. It's quite fast. 96%, 97%, 98%, 99%. Then there was no then. 3 minutes later, the game's loading progress bar was still stuck at 99%. F***. Tang angrily slammed the table, causing the glass of water to ripple. Then, he subconsciously slammed the computer screen and kicked the roaring mainframe. This was a habit he developed from watching the old TV at home when he was young. Electrical appliances were things that would be repaired if you kicked them hard. However, practice proved that this electrical appliance repair theory was not always useful. At least it was useless now. The data bar was still stuck at 99%. Moreover, Tang In did not notice that his angry slamming of the table had caused a lot of water to spill out of the glass. At that moment, the water droplets were dripping into the socket next to the table. The angry Tang In did not believe that the electrical appliance theory he had always believed in was ineffective. He kicked the mainframe again. However, this time, he kicked the socket next to the mainframe. Sparks flashed, and sparks flew. Tang In felt his body go numb, and his head hit the computer screen. Before his vision turned black, Tang In saw the data bar skip past 100%. The words "killer system" appeared on the screen with a black figure holding a blood-red dagger in the background. The last scene before his death was not like what was described in famous novels where countless fragments of his life flashed before his eyes. Instead, it was a thought. Electrical appliances are really things that will be repaired if you kick them. No way, I was actually killed by a cup of water? After sorting out the fragments in his mind, Tang In said gloomily, he lived a life similar to water, but in the end, he was killed by water. One ironic life. Dad, Mom, I'm unfilial. Thinking about how sad his parents would be after his death, Tang In grabbed his hair in pain. Ding. Killer system activated. Data loading. Ding. Abnormal data. Please supplement it yourself. Collecting system host data. Loading. Ding. Loading completed. Chidian website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works are all at Chidian Originals. Chapter 2. Killer System. Tang In, who was in a sad state, was stunned by the series of prompts in his mind. He subconsciously murmured this familiar name in his heart. Instantly, Tang In's vision blurred, and he found himself standing in an empty hall. In the middle of the hall stood a strict old man in a neat tuxedo with silver-white hair combed back. This kind of dressing reminded Tang In of the British butler in the old Western movies. The old man dressed like a butler put his right hand in front of him and bowed to Tang In. Welcome, the new generation of system killer. How should I address you? System killer? Tang In looked around and pointed at himself suspiciously. Are you talking about me? You must have mistaken me for someone else. I'm Tang In. May I ask where this place is, and who are you? Hello, Tang In. You can call me the old butler. The old man said calmly. This is the killer system's space. To be specific, we are now in your mind. Huh, in my mind? Tang In was shocked. Then he thought of the familiar origin of the name Killer System. Wasn't it the game he had to play before he crossed over? Have you heard of Mount Sumeru? It's pretty much like that. Tang In nodded to show that he had heard of it. After all, he had read a lot of web novels before and knew the definition of this space. Then what does this killer system do? Train you to be a killer. Train me to be a killer? Tang In was stunned. Are you kidding? I haven't even killed a chicken or a duck. A killer doesn't need to kill chickens or ducks. Killing is enough. The old butler looked at Tang In up and down. Moreover, you have the initial talent to be a killer. I have talent? Yes. Your appearance is ordinary enough. This is very good. Hee. Thank you for the compliment. Tang In snorted with a fake smile. You're welcome. The old butler did not care about Tang In's mockery and continued. It's a pity that your eyes are a little long and narrow, making them more distinguishable. This is not perfect. Do you have good eyesight? This is the red phoenix eyes, all right? Tang In screamed in his heart. I'm relying on this to shine, but that's not a big problem. We can disguise ourselves. Wait. First of all, thank you for your recognition, but Tang In made a pause gesture and said firmly, I won't kill anyone. I won't become an assassin. Assassins don't have many choices to begin with. Since the system has chosen you, you must become an assassin. The old butler did not care about Tang In's strong opposition. He was obviously very confident in the system. Haha, is that so? Tang In didn't think much of it. Why would I learn something as bloody and dangerous as killing people? Are you kidding me? The old butler said seriously, That's right. Taking a step back, at least the assassin system won't let you starve to death right now. Ugh. Tangan was stunned and immediately thought of his current situation. He had just crossed over to this unfamiliar world. It seemed that there was a big possibility that he would starve to death. Does this assassin system provide food and drink? Old butler, of course not. But the system can teach you how to get food. For example, there is a small forest south of Little Rock Village. The system can teach you how to hunt. Tangon's heart moved. You can see outside? Just now, he seemed to have seen a large forest in the corner of his eyes. Of course, I can see what you can see. But if you don't enter the assassin system space, we can't communicate. Tang nodded and said, Then hurry up and teach me how to hunt. The problem of food was a big deal. Tang did not want to starve to death right after crossing over. I'm happy to help. But before I teach you, I advise you to go out and find a place where there is no one. You should know that your body has been standing next to the well for a long time without moving. The old butler gracefully saluted and said calmly, How do I quit? Just say in your heart to quit the assassin system. Quit the assassin system. Tangon's eyes blurred, and he returned to the well in Little Rock Village. Looking at the strange gazes of the surrounding farmers, Tang touched his nose and quickly left. Little Rock Village was not big. It had about 200 people. The only building in the village that had a bit of character was the small church. On top of the church's pointed roof, there was a naked, handsome male statue holding a torch. Tangan looked at it for a while and confirmed that it was not Jesus who was nailed on the cross. After a while, Tang left the farm and went straight to the south of the forest. In the periphery of the forest, Tang found a remote corner. He leaned against a tree trunk and called out the assassin system in his heart. Tang opened his mouth and looked at the dense forest in front of him. He was a little dumbfounded. Just now he was in the hall. The old butler standing next to him said calmly, Don't make a fuss. The system space is ever-changing. After saying that, the old butler waved his right hand and a light blue screen appeared out of thin air. This is your assassin system panel. Let me introduce it to you as a whole. Tang was already immune to the light screen that appeared out of thin air. He could even make a forest, let alone this, looking up at the small, densely packed words on the light screen. Tang suddenly felt a lot of pressure. System level, novice assassin code. Tang inexperience points, 0 vitality points, 0 skill tree. Layout, hiding, disguise, killing techniques, status. The small, densely packed words on the light screen were mainly concentrated under a few skill trees. Tang was dazzled by it. Fortunately, the old butler began to introduce it. The so-called layout means that before you kill someone, you need to determine the scene of the attack and complete the preparations in advance. Draw up more than one attack and retreat route. Of course, this is only a basic layout. Don't underestimate these trivial tasks. A brilliant layout can kill someone invisibly. Hiding. Now you can only learn to hide by using various obstacles so that you won't be discovered by the target. Disguise. It's easy to understand. Now you only need to learn basic disguise and become another person in appearance, including children, women, old people. Wait a minute. Tang raised his hand and interrupted the old butler's introduction. I can understand disguising as an old person or even a woman, but disguising as a child is too ridiculous. That physique is obviously, ugh. Click, click, click. Although the old butler looked old, his posture was still tall and straight. When the two stood together, the old butler was 10 centimeters taller than Tang, and who was 175 centimeters tall. But now he twisted his body a few times. His body suddenly shrank by more than half and only reached Tangan's thigh. Then the old butler waved his hand and changed into a set of children's clothing with cute animals printed on it. His body lightly jumped a few steps. That figure, Tang vaguely saw a child carrying a small bag and jumping to school on the side of the road. Any more questions? The old butler waved his hand and returned to his original appearance. No, very good. Next is killing techniques. This is more complicated. Now there are long and short weapon proficiency close combat, and poison making. I suggest you learn crossbow first. It's easy to make, easy to operate, and powerful. The most important thing is the long attack range. Even if you can't kill the target, you have a chance to escape. As for status, an assassin in peak condition is terrifying. You can't reach this level now, so let's skip it for now. Of the above 5 skill trees, you can only reach some basic skills at this stage. You can only learn more powerful skills after you upgrade the assassin system. The skill levels are beginner, master, proficient, master, master, and grandmaster. Tang was fascinated and nodded repeatedly. How do I upgrade the system? The old butler said, reach a certain amount of experience points and complete the upgrade task. The assassin system will give you some tasks from time to time. Completing the task will give you experience points, and killing people will give you blood energy points. Blood energy is very important to assassins. It involves the power of the assassin skill tree. The more people you kill, the more blood energy you will get. This blood energy will be stored in your body. When you fight, it will help you increase your lethality. The consumed blood energy will be recovered in the early hours of every day. Tang quickly shook his head and said, well, it's about killing people again. Let's talk about how to get food. Yes, this involves the wilderness survival skills and the layout. I suggest you learn how to build a wooden house in the woods, start a fire, and make a simple crossbow. Okay, no problem. It was about his survival, so Tang was very obedient. So, Tang, you're building a wooden house, not a bird's nest. Well, it's big enough, but if you sleep in it, you might turn into an iceman overnight. It's not bad this time. It looks a bit like a wooden house. If you're not worried about falling to your death at night, you can consider staying there. Tang, if you're drilling wood to start a fire, you may need to drill until tomorrow. Tang, if you start a fire here, this forest will be ignited by you. Tang, shut up. Puff. Cough, cough. Tang's eyes were red, and his face was green and gray. He coughed repeatedly, and black gas kept coming out of his mouth. The old butler spread his hands regretfully. Sorry, I just wanted to remind you that the angle of your blowing on the fire is wrong. Chapter 3. At noon, Tang, who was originally lying motionlessly on the tree trunk, suddenly jumped up and went straight to Little Rock Village. Fortunately, Tang met the old farmer again. The old farmer understood the purpose of Tang's visit and straightforwardly lent him a short-handled axe. Tang took the axe and turned back into the forest. In a remote area, he found a big tree with a tall trunk and dense branches. After spitting twice on his hands, Tang climbed up the tree while huffing and puffing. First, observe the terrain and choose the foundation. While muttering, Tang's eyes lit up as he set his sights on a wide and thick branch. This branch was wide and sturdy, and there were many small branches supporting it. It was the best choice for the wooden house's foundation. Next is to lay the foundation and build the wall. 2 hours later. Wah! I'm AF * King Genius. Tang danced under the tree and looked at the wooden house above his head with a sense of accomplishment. Of course, if someone else came here and saw Tang's genius work, they would never associate it with a wooden house. That was because the strange structure on the branch was more like a wooden barrel than a wooden house. A wooden barrel with an appearance that tested one's imagination. Now that the thing was done, it was necessary to find a professional to evaluate it. Tang entered the assassin system space. The old butler was staring at Tang's genius work on the hologram. How is it? It's okay. Tang's face was full of joy. The old butler nodded. Yes, it has a bit of an artistic feel. Oh, really? I just happened to get it by chance. The old butler sighed. It's definitely a coincidence. Normal people can't make this kind of postmodern abstract work. Although the wooden house's appearance was strongly criticized, the old butler reluctantly agreed with its practicality. He said that as long as it didn't encounter bad weather, the safety of the wooden house was reliable. Then, after several failures, Tang finally combined a simple crossbow with moderately hard short wood and extremely tough vines. It was simple. The grooves were not precise. The bowstring was uneven on both sides, and the weight of the crossbow was different. Everything was done manually. From a practical point of view, it was a complete failure. From an aesthetic point of view, this thing tied with green vines was a joke. However, at least it could shoot the crossbow. Looking at the simple crossbow, Tang Yin gave an evaluation. The flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. The old butler's evaluation was that it was suitable for close combat. The old butler's evaluation was professional, and it could be said to the point. Although this crossbow looked terrible when used, well, it was also terrible to look at. However, it was undeniable that under the old butler's guidance, the lethality of the crossbow was guaranteed. Coupled with the sharpened crossbow bolts, within a range of 3 to 5 steps, piercing through an unarmored target was a piece of cake. What about 5 steps? Didn't you see the old butler's evaluation? It was suitable for close combat. 5 steps away, with the crossbow's accuracy, it was hard to say where it would hit. Although the crossbow could also be said to be a short to medium-range weapon, the accuracy of the shooting range had to be at least 50 to 100 steps. Tang Yin designed the short to medium-range crossbow as a close combat weapon. It could be said that he had completed a pioneering work. The crossbow was successfully made. Of course, he had to try it out. After all, dinner had not been settled yet. The rye bread given by Father York was eaten by Tang and his lunch and was digested early. Because it was his first time hunting, Tang Yin was more excited. After moving about a few hundred meters into the forest, he successfully found a pheasant with bright feathers. The pheasant was looking for food. It pecked at something on the ground from time to time. When Tang Yin was about 50 meters away, the pheasant vigilantly looked around. Tang Yin quickly lowered his body and secretly put the crossbow in front of him. However, before Tang Yin could aim, the pheasant suddenly flapped its wings and flew away. It quickly disappeared from Tang Yin's sight. F***CK. Tang Yin angrily punched the ground. I'm not ready yet. Why are you running away? Bad start. However, Tang Yin was not discouraged. He continued to explore. The environment in this other world was really good. The air was fresh, and there were many wild animals. After continuing to move into the forest, Tang Yin found a lot of prey. There were pheasants, hares, bamboo rats, and so on. However, these wild animals were too vigilant. Before Tang Yin could get close, most of the prey avoided him, as if they could predict the future. 2 hours passed. Tang Yin did not even shoot a single arrow. F***CK. Tang Yin was angry. He simply did not hide. He directly used the crossbow to wait on it from dozens of meters away. Whoosh, whoosh. The strength of the crossbow was really not small. Every time it was shot, there was a sound of air breaking. But the accuracy, how should he put it? When Tang Yin aimed, the crossbow arrow was very far from the mark. When Tang Yin drew inferences from one case and purposely aimed at a blind spot, the result was even more outrageous. Cuckoo, Russell, the pheasants flew away and the hares ran away. This forest was stirred up by Tang Yin. A lot of crossbow arrows were shot, but none of them succeeded. Some of the crossbow arrows were so far from the mark that they could not be retrieved. His first hunt was a complete failure. Tang Yin returned to the assassin system space with a gloomy face. The space was still like a forest. The old butler was fiddling with a strange-looking crossbow. In front of the old butler, there was a pheasant foraging for food in the bushes about dozens of meters away. Whoosh! The old butler casually raised the crossbow and shot an arrow quickly. With a thud, it was nailed to the pheasant's claw. Cuckoo! The pheasant was obviously shocked. It quickly flapped its wings and wanted to fly away. At this moment, whoosh! Another sound of air breaking came. The low-flying pheasant seemed to have been struck by lightning. It whined and fell to the ground, motionless. Using this thing to hunt from a long distance is indeed a little difficult. The old butler threw the crossbow to the dumbfounded Tang Yin. Tang Yin turned the crossbow in his hand over and over again. There was no mistake. This engraving, this shape, it was the one he used outside. Don't be so surprised. I said that the assassin system space can be ever-changing. I'm not surprised by this. Tang Yin shook his head and put on a worshipful expression. Old butler, your archery skills are simply godly. and you're using this kind of crossbow. The old butler said, "You will be like this in the future. As a qualified assassin, you must understand the weapon in your hand in the shortest time." Tangan raised his eyebrows with an expression of "You're here again. You'd better teach me how to use the crossbow well, or I'll really starve tonight." "Don't worry." The old butler waved his hand, and a light screen appeared. The light screen showed Tangan's hunting process. Looking at his own embarrassment from the perspective of a bystander, Tangan's old face was a little red. "Do you know why these animals react when you're not close?" The old butler asked and answered his own question. The creatures in the wild are very sensitive to their vision, smell, and hearing. Some alert creatures even have an instinctive intuition for danger, so when they feel danger approaching, they will quickly leave. Tangan looked at the prey he scared away on the light screen and nodded in agreement. He asked, "How can I get close to them without being noticed?" "Good question. You'll have to use the assassin system's hiding skill tree." "Oh, so that's what you're waiting for." "I say, old butler, don't bother. I won't be an assassin." Tangan suddenly realized that the old butler wanted him to learn the skills of an assassin. The old butler still had a calm expression on his face. "We're talking about your eating problem now. Taking a step back, even if I want you to learn the skills of an assassin from the current point of view, there's no conflict, right?" Tangan touched his nose. "Well, that's true." "Then continue. Let's give an example." The old butler waved his hand, and the dead pheasant in the distance disappeared, and a gray hare appeared. As soon as the hare appeared, it looked around and seemed to be very alert. The perception of animals is limited, so if you master the preliminary hiding skills, you can do this. The old butler calmly walked towards the hare. He didn't hide his figure, nor did he make any special movements. But after the old butler walked for more than 10 meters, the hare didn't react at all. How is it possible? Is this hare fake? Tangan, who had just seen the hare's keen intuition while hunting, immediately thought of the wrong thing. But this old butler always had a calm expression, so he shouldn't be so wretched. There must be some skills. Where is it? Where is it? Well, Tangan's eyes lit up as he observed carefully. He saw the rabbit's agile head turn towards the old butler, but the old butler acted as if he did not see it and continued to calmly walk past. The wild rabbit also retracted its gaze and looked elsewhere. "Damn, does it have to be so fake? That's not right." Just now, from the old butler's angle, the two seemed to be separated by a tree. No way is it a coincidence. Soon, Tangan denied this possibility because when the hare turned around for the second time, the old butler passed by a tree at the right time. So that's how it is. But then Tangan frowned again. Even so, what about the hare's hearing? Those long ears aren't fake. Such a big person walking, no matter what, would make some noise. While Tangan was puzzled, the old butler had already walked to the hare's side. At this moment, the hare was gnawing on the grass beside it, but it was still alert. It still looked around from time to time, its long ears moving nimbly. However, it would never have thought that there was a person standing quietly beside it. Looking at the nimble hare and the quiet old butler, Tangan suddenly felt a chill in his heart for some reason. He unconsciously twisted his neck and secretly glanced behind him. "This is elementary concealment. Do you want to learn it?" asked the old butler, who had already returned. Tangan looked at the fat hare that was still vigilantly gnawing on the grass in the distance and nodded heavily. At dusk, in the forest south of Little Rock Village, a pheasant was happily pecking at the seeds on the ground. After a while, it suddenly raised its head and looked around. There were no other creatures in sight, but for some reason, it looked a little hesitant. But the food on the ground still tempted it to lower its head and peck incessantly. The greedy pheasant didn't know that it had walked into a trap. Puff! With a soft sound, something like a cover covered it. Cuckoo! The frightened cries of the pheasant and the sound of flapping wings could be heard from the cover. Wah! Dinner is settled. Chapter 4. In the woods, Tangan complacently tied up the pheasant with rattan. Then he went to retrieve the hunting device, a short wooden stick tied with slender vines and a net made of various branches. Yes, the trap was set up by Tangan. Of course, it was completed under the guidance of the old butler. The shooting accuracy of crossbow could not be solved in a short time, not to mention such a broken crossbow. Therefore, after teaching Tang in some simple concealment techniques, the old butler gave him such an idiot-style hunting device. The result was very gratifying. Tang In finally solved the serious problem of starving when he just arrived in the other world. The prey was caught, and the problem that followed was how to turn it into food that could be eaten. The old butler's suggestion was to make beggar's chicken. The method was simple, and the taste was not bad. The most important thing was that there was no need to pluck the feathers. However, after successfully making a fire and using large leaves to scoop water from the village, Tang In hesitated as he looked at the pheasant that seemed to have accepted its fate. He had said before that he had never killed chickens and ducks, and that was really the truth. Although Tang In's family background was ordinary, his parents still doted on him and did not let him touch these things. In addition, he had just graduated and had not experienced life experience, so he really had not done anything to chickens and ducks. However, the hunger in his stomach was very real. It was a pity that he had only eaten a piece of rye bread on the day he arrived in the other world. Tang In sighed. That's why people say that people are forced to do things. Brother Chicken, you have fallen into my hands today. It's better for you to die early and reincarnate early. After rubbing his palms, Tang In pressed down on the pheasant's body, tightened the handle of the axe, and swung the axe down. Coo! Blood splattered everywhere, and the pheasant let out its last cry. Tang In only felt a heat in his hand. He looked down and saw that his hand was stained with pheasant blood. He could not help but relax. Unexpectedly, the pheasant without a head actually flapped its wings and flew away. F***CK. Tang In was completely dumbfounded. This was not F***King scientific. He had heard of a cooked duck flying away, but he had never seen a headless pheasant running away. Fortunately, after the wild chicken ran for a few dozen meters, it fell to the ground and stopped moving. After this absurd scene, the rest went much smoother. After a period of roasting, Tang In successfully ate the legendary beggar's chicken. Pheasants were still very nutritious. They were buttery and had good meat. However, without any supplementary ingredients, the taste of pheasants was just average. However, Tang In was really hungry. In addition, he made it himself, so he ate it with relish and a sense of accomplishment. For the next few days, Tang In temporarily stayed in this forest. He had not decided how to plan his life in a foreign land. Tang In did not want to be an assassin. The danger was one thing, but the key was that he could not get over the mental barrier. After all, he was a proper university student. Although he was second-rate, he could not casually take other people's lives for money. However, although he did not want to be an assassin, he often went to the system space. He often practiced the things that the old butler gave him. Firstly, he had nothing to do. Secondly, it was not a burden to have more skills. The old butler did not force him. He just took out an assassin game and asked him to complete the assassin mission. Although Tang In rejected being an assassin, as a game fan, he would not object to this kind of virtual game. However, the difficulty of this game was too high. Tang In played it for a few days, but he could not pass a level. This made him, who had always boasted of being a game expert, lose face. He devoted himself to delving into the game. The first level of the game was to steal a noble's sword. This goal did not seem difficult. However, every time Tang In did not get close to the noble's house, he was discovered by the wolfhound guarding the house. Under the wild barking, the guard arrived and killed him in an instant. This made him very depressed. Fortunately, this was a virtual game and there was no keyboard or mouse. Otherwise, he did not know how many times he would have broken. At noon, it was time for lunch. F***CK. It's this stupid dog again. Don't let me get the chance. Otherwise, I'll chop you up 10 times. Tang In cursed as he carried the hunting device and looked around for a place to set up a trap. This time, he managed to knock out a guard with a sneak attack. He climbed over the backyard wall and entered the noble's house. However, before he could get excited after landing, a series of barking was heard. Tang was once again killed by a team of guards who rushed over after hearing the news. Damn, you're just a guard dog. Why did you wander in a backyard? This rabbit is quite fat. It's a pity that I can't catch it. Tang looked at the fat rabbit dozens of meters away and drooled. Tang subconsciously observed the surrounding environment. It was at a disadvantage. The forest was dense and the bushes were knee-high. It was a favorable terrain for hiding. What was he thinking? Did he think that he was the old butler? Tang secretly despised himself. However, once the thought arose, Tang could not help but think in this direction. Forget it, I'll give it a try. There's nothing to lose anyway. Tang licked his lips and slowly walked to the rabbit from the side. Focus, calm, breathe, observe. The frequency of the rabbit eating grass, the time it took to turn its head, the distance between the trees in front of it and the next tree, whether there were dead branches under its feet, slowly. At this moment, Tang-un's eyes gradually became still as he walked slowly. His mind was full of the hiding skills taught by the old butler. He walked forward more than 10 meters like a ghost. The rabbit did not respond. In the space, the old butler calmly looked at the screen. The corner of his mouth twitched. It's not bad. However, do you think it's so easy to get close to it? Tang had already walked more than half of the distance of dozens of meters. At this moment, the ears of the rabbit that was eating grass suddenly twitched. It raised its head and looked in front of it. It was just an ordinary bush. The wind in the forest gently blew the leaves, making a rustling sound. The rabbit sniffed, withdrew its gaze, and continued to eat the grass. Tang, who was behind the tree, frowned slightly. Just now, he had only taken a tentative step, and the rabbit had quickly sensed it. Can't I get closer? It doesn't make sense. How did the old butler walk over? I can't figure out. Calm down. There must be a way. At such a long distance, the rabbit is eating grass with its head down. I'm at a disadvantage. The problem should be the sound. I can't hear my own footsteps, but it doesn't mean that the rabbit can't hear it. How can I let the rabbit hear the sound without raising its head? Damn, the more I think about it, the more mysterious it is. Tang raised his head and took a deep breath. This rabbit is not an idiot. At this moment, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Tang looked up at the rustling leaves and opened his mouth thoughtfully. Sound? Sound. Tang raised his eyebrows. After a moment, he stepped out from behind the tree. More than 10 meters away, the herbivorous rabbit did not respond. Success. Sure enough, Tang suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and walked forward slowly. In the space, the old butler nodded slightly. This kid has some talent in hiding. Tang was just a rookie killer who had just learned how to hide. In other words, he couldn't even be called a rookie. His footsteps were inevitable. The rabbit's long ears were not for nothing. It could sense any abnormal sound around it. But this time, the rabbit's problem happened to be that there was no abnormality. For the rabbit, the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves from time to time in the forest was not abnormal. Tang approached it with the help of the rustling leaves. But was it really so smooth? We all know that the wind in the forest can be fast or slow. Perhaps there are experienced people who know the strength of the wind, but this person is definitely not the current Tang. When Tang was 3 meters away from the rabbit, the rustling leaves stopped. The rabbit suddenly raised its head. At such a close distance, Tang could even see the sawtooth grass leaves on the 2 big teeth of its 3-petaled mouth. When the wind stopped, Tang knew it was bad. He held the net and rushed forward. Tang's reaction was not slow, but the rabbit's calf kicked up the dust and quickly passed under the net. Damn, it was a failure. Tang, who missed the net, fell and grimaced. Bang! Before Tang could start to regret, there was a loud crash beside him. Tang looked to the side in shock and was suddenly stunned. He had read a sentence before. Life is like a piece of chocolate. You never know what the next one will taste like. At that time, Tang did not have any feelings. Now, looking at the wild rabbit that had crashed its head into a tree trunk and died because of its panic, Tang suddenly felt that this sentence was too F*** king reasonable. The the legendary waiting for the rabbit to appear. The ancients did not lie to me. Tang En was in a particularly good mood when he mentioned this unlucky rabbit. Tang En's cooking skills were average, and it was limited to pheasants. He did not want to make a beggar rabbit. Fortunately, these days, he was quite familiar with the old farmer in the farm. If there was any game, he would directly bring it to him. The old farmer's wife left early, and he was unwilling to go to the city with his sons, so he lived in a village mill. Although he did not have to worry about food and clothing, it was inevitable that he would be lonely. When he saw Tang En coming over with a fat rabbit, his eyes lit up and he quickly took it. Weighing it in his hand, the old farmer immediately beamed with joy. "This beast has good teeth. Isn't it at least 5 pounds? Tang, thanks to you today, my craving has been quenched." Tang En laughed and said, "This is really not my credit. I was lucky today. When I went out, I saw this thing run into a tree by itself." "Ha ha ha, Tang, you really know how to joke. Okay, I'll go take care of this beast first. Go to the cellar and help me get a bottle of green fruit wine. Today, we have to celebrate." The green fruit wine was brewed by the old farmer from a common green fruit that was collected here. It was slightly alcoholic and had a slightly sour taste. Okay, the old farmer handled the game with alacrity. In less than an hour, he brought up 2 plates of rabbit meat. One was stewed and the other was braised. The styles were different, and the smell was enough to stimulate one's appetite. Tang En took 2 clay cups and poured the green fruit wine. The old farmer wiped his hands and said, "Today, I'll make these 2 flavors. I'll marinate the rest of the rabbit meat first. Tomorrow, I'll make smoked rabbit meat for you. That tastes tsk. Haha, that's great." Tang En was overjoyed. The dishes and wine were already on the table, but Tang En was not in a hurry to start eating. After a few days of getting along, he knew that the old farmer was a devout believer. Every time before eating, he would pray, "Thank the loving God of light for giving us food." The old farmer believed in the male sculpture on the roof of the village's church, the God of light. Every month, except for his own use and rent that needed to be handed in, he donated everything else to the small church. In the past few days, under Tang En's indirect questioning, he finally learned from the old farmer that this place was called the Shiza continent. It was an era ruled by royalty and theocracy. The royalty system was similar to the absolute monarchy that Tang En saw in history books. Tang En's current location was one of the 2 great empires of the Shiza continent, the Brand Kingdom. As for the other empire, well, rather than calling it an empire, it would be better to call it a tribe, the Northern Wilderness tribes. A mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers, this was for sure. The Brand Kingdom and the Northern Wilderness tribes were constantly at war. But for the old farmer, these things were too far away. Little Rock Village was located in the south of the empire. He had never seen those ferocious barbarians in the Northern Wilderness. What interested Tang En the most was that he heard from the old farmer about the existence of qi and magic. But when Tang En wanted to understand in detail, he regretfully found that the old farmer knew very little about these 2 things. Regarding magic, the old farmer only knew that magicians were very noble. The only magic he had seen in his life was the healing magic of Father York. That's right, it was the kind of warm light that Tang En mistook for a portable bath. As for qi, the old farmer had only heard that the highest-ranking officer here, a knight, had this kind of thing. After the old farmer finished praying, Tang En couldn't wait to taste the rabbit meat feast. The old farmer drank a few pieces of rabbit meat and a few cups of green fruit wine and began to habitually ramble. The content was more or less the same as what Tang En had heard a few times before, but the degree of exaggeration was slightly different. Something like the granddaughter of old John from the east side of the village was lucky. Under the guidance of Father York, she joined the Church of the God of Light and was recently sent to a faraway monastery to further her studies. Or maybe he had seen a magician fly in the air when he was young and destroy evil magical beasts with a wave of his hand. The latter was probably something he had heard from a wandering bard. Tang En held his wine cup and smiled. Life in another world was quite interesting. He drank it in one gulp. "Dad, Mom, I'm fine here. You don't have to worry." Chapter 5. The alcohol content of the green fruit wine was not high, but with such delicious food, Tang Yin drank a lot. When he woke up, he found that the sun was already setting. Tang Yin declined the old farmer's offer to stay the night and returned to his forest cabin. It was not that Tang Yin was stupid, but the old farmer only had one living room. Tang Yin was naturally embarrassed to occupy the old farmer's bed. Moreover, his forest cabin had a little taste of a castle in the air after the renovation in the past few days. This made Tang Yin, who was used to living in reinforced concrete buildings, feel very fresh. Tang Yin, who had slept for most of the day, was naturally no longer sleepy. As soon as he returned to the cabin, he entered the killer system's space. The inside of the space still looked like a forest, which was very similar to the place where Tang Yin was currently at. Tang Yin suspected that the old butler had directly used the template of reality to build it. However, there was still one thing that was different from the outside. This was the exquisite wooden cabin erected on a tall tree trunk. Obviously, this exquisite wooden cabin was repaired by the old butler. This was not comparable to Tang Yin's genius work. It was not an exaggeration to say that the two were like clouds and mud. Tang Yin's forest cabin's later improvement work was a reference to this exquisite wooden cabin. The old butler still stood in front of Tang Yin with a serious expression. If there was a camera that captured the old butler's current expression, image, and standing posture, Tang Yin absolutely believed that the old butler's appearance would be the same the next time he compared it. "Good evening, Tang Yin." Good evening, old butler." Tang Yin looked at the sunny forest in the system's space and felt that this greeting was a bit silly. Tang Yin went straight to the point. "Old butler, hurry up and open the game. I want revenge tonight." Today's extraordinary performance at noon gave Tang Yin a lot of confidence. He was now eager to kill the evil dog that had hindered him for several days. "It's my pleasure." The old butler waved his hand, and the scene changed. A luxuriously decorated noble manor appeared. Tang Yin was eager to take revenge, so he had no time to look at these beautiful buildings. He took a step forward and entered the game scene. As it turned out, Tang Yin's level of concealment had indeed improved greatly. This time, he successfully climbed over the manor's wall and circled behind the vicious dog. "Who told you to be so arrogant? Who told you to look down on me like a dog? Yo, how dare you bite me?" Tang Yin excitedly stabbed the evil dog with his dagger. After all, he had the upper hand. The vicious dog struggled for a moment before it was stabbed to death by Tang Yin. However, after causing such a big commotion, the manor's guards also treated him as their master. Tang Yin, on the other hand, didn't care at all. He said, "I'll be back," before he was hacked to death by the swarming guards. In fact, Tang Yin was a man of his word. After exiting, he entered the game scene that was restored to its original state. A moment later, "Who told you to be so arrogant and snobbish? I said I'll chop you 10 times, and I'll chop you 10 times. The old butler, who had always been expressionless, looked at Tang Yin excitedly shuttling back and forth in the game space. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Well, this is also considered a talent. Should I train him in the direction of an abnormal killer? The old butler didn't stop Tang Yin from messing around. In his opinion, at least in this boring farce, Tang Yin's concealment skill was gradually becoming more proficient. Finally, after a few hours, Tang Yin successfully completed his great goal of chopping the vicious dog 10 times. The last time, he took advantage of his good state to directly sneak into the aristocrat's bedroom and steal the sword from the aristocrat who was sleeping soundly. Looking at the golden words that indicated the completion of the mission, Tang Yin laughed with his hands on his hips. The scene dimmed and Tang Yin exited the game. Just as Tang Yin stepped into the system space, the system's synthetic voice sounded. "Ding! Congratulations to the killer Tang Yin for completing the mission of stealing the aristocrat sword. Mission difficulty, F-, completion evaluation, F-, experience gained, 25 points. Ding! Title system activated. Obtain the title, Vicious Dog's Nemesis. With this title, ordinary watchdogs will retreat. Vicious Dog's Nemesis? F***, What a troublesome title. After hearing the reward, Tang In was speechless. The old butler said, "Well done." It's all right." Tang In looked at the old butler's expressionless face and confirmed that it wasn't sarcasm. The old butler said seriously, "It's really well done. It's very difficult to obtain a system title. Moreover, the title function is also effective in the outside world. It's also useful in the real world." Tang In was surprised. Of course, the power, skills, titles, etc. that you obtain in the system space are all effective in the outside world. Tang In nodded, indicating that he understood. He called out the killer panel and found that there was an additional title system. It was labeled as Vicious Dog's Nemesis. The experience points below also increased by 25 points. In the skill tree, behind the beginner concealment was labeled Mastered. The beginner layout was Beginner. The beginner killing skill was Beginner Crossbow. Old Butler, what other games are there? Hurry up and take them out. Tang In tasted the sweetness of completing the mission and couldn't wait to start the next game. The old butler shook his head. "I don't recommend that you continue to play games because after a while, you have a system mission to do." System mission? Yes, you have activated the killer system for 7 days. These 7 days are the novice protection period. In a few minutes, the novice protection period will be over. At that time, there will be a system mission that must be done. Then what is the content of this mission? I don't know. This is from the system. Right? What do you mean by must do? If I don't do it? Tang In suddenly had a bad premonition. This is a system certification mission that must be done. If you don't do it, the old butler didn't answer directly. After a pause, he said, "As I said before, as an assassin, there really aren't many choices." Tang In said, "Will I be killed?" The old butler didn't answer. He just looked up at the space above. The system's synthesized voice sounded again. "Ding! The killer system's 7-day novice protection period has passed. Ding! Activating killer certification mission. Warning, warning. This mission is unique. If the killer can't complete it on time, he will be obliterated. Killer certification mission. Kill Father York. Mission completion time, 72 hours. Mission countdown begins." Beep, beep, beep. Tang In opened his mouth and was silent. Although the old butler explained the seriousness of the mission, Tang In still had some hope. There are many forms of missions. For example, the theft mission that he had completed previously. Even if it was in reality, he could just return it to the person who had done it. But now it seemed that he was too naive. The killer system was a place to train killers. It must be to kill people, Father York. Tang was a bit absent-minded. The old butler said yes. F*CK, he is a good person. Perhaps he was provoked by the old butler's indifferent expression. Tang In clenched his fists and his face turned red. He shouted at the old butler ferociously. The old butler said quietly, "First of all, this mission was not given by me. Secondly, it is God's job to determine whether a person is good or bad." T God. You've seen Father York before, haven't you? Is he not a good person? The old butler said, "Is giving you a piece of bread a good person?" Tang In said angrily, "Bullshit. Who in Little Rock Village did not receive his help? Who doesn't admit that he is a good person?" The butcher gave food and shelter to the pigs he reared. To the pigs, is the butcher a good person? Also, Tang In, don't you understand? You are a killer. A killer only cares about the target, no matter if it is good or bad. Tang In looked at the old butler with disdain. "Bullshit killer. You are slandering me." The old butler said, "There is no point in arguing. If you want to be entangled in something you don't even understand, you have already learned basic skills. You've already grasped elementary concealment, so you can check for yourself if it's slander. Okay, I will go tomorrow. I will use facts to tell you that you are wrong. I would rather be obliterated than hurt, Father York. I will wait and see." After a moment of silence, Tang In said, "Even if it is not Father York this time, I will not kill anyone. I have said this before. You have never killed a chicken or a duck before, and then, this is different." Tang In interrupted the old butler's words and exited the killer system. F*CK. Tang In let out a long sigh of relief and punched the wooden house's partition. The clear moonlight shone through the window. Tang In lay on the wooden bed and looked at the stars in the sky through the gaps between the branches. The forest at night was very quiet. There were some insects and unknown birds, which deepened the silence of the night. Such a quiet night allowed the angry Tang In to gradually calm down. Can I only see such a beautiful night 3 more times? Tang In thought in a daze as he breathed in the fragrance of the wood. Tang In was naturally afraid of death. However, Tang In clenched his fist. Father York was a good person. A good person should not be killed, at least not by him. Chapter 6. Clang, clang, clang. The next morning, Tang In woke up to the melodious sound of a bell. Is this the sound of a bell? It seems to be coming from Little Rock Village. Tang In shook his head and woke up. He walked out of the wooden house and looked at the smoke rising in the direction of Little Rock Village. Compared to Tang In, who did not know the situation, the villagers of Little Rock Village were used to the sound of the bell every Sunday. This was the church gathering believers to participate in the prayer meeting. Believers from the surrounding villages would come early. The villagers of Little Rock Village walked out of their houses. At this time, even the laziest person in the village would get up and walk to the church. Gradually, more and more people began to gather around. Fortunately, there was an open space in front of the church. Otherwise, the small church would have collapsed. After the 9th bell was rung, Father York walked out in a neat black robe. Under the gaze of the benevolent God of light, devout believers, good morning. Today is the time for the weekly prayer meeting. I'm very happy that everyone insisted on participating. Today, before the prayer meeting begins, I have something to announce. Around noon today, the Church of Light's 4 Directions Inspector, Lord Sessman, will come to our church. At that time, he will bring the greetings of the Church of Light to everyone. As soon as Father York finished speaking, the people below were in an uproar. Everyone's face was filled with joy and excitement. The Church of Light was known as the place closest to God. The Lord of the Church of Light was the spokesperson of God in the world. After the announcement, Father York began to preside over the entire prayer meeting. Tang In watched Father York's every move from the crowd. His gentle demeanor and kind expression did not reveal anything strange. Tang In really did not believe that Father York was a bad person. The entire prayer meeting lasted for about an hour. Usually, after the prayer meeting ended, a large number of believers would disperse. It was only possible that a few of the faithful would talk to York about their faith in God or something. But today, because they knew that a big shot was coming, a large number of believers stayed inside and outside the church. Tang In also took the opportunity to walk around the church. Little Rock Village's church was actually very small. The first thing he saw when he walked in was a hanging clock. Behind the clock was a bishop's hall. In the bishop's hall, there were 2 rows of chairs and a podium. In the corner, there was also an announcement pavilion. Father York was currently sitting inside, answering questions or confessing to the believers. Behind the bishop's hall was the place where Father York stayed. Tang In secretly apologized and sneaked in to investigate, but he found nothing. The room had a simple bed, table, and chairs, as well as a bookcase with a stack of religious books. Therefore, Tang In left a small secret door at the window so that it would be convenient for him to come in the next time, and then left the room. After the fruitless investigation, Tang In returned to the corner of the bishop's hall and quietly guarded Father York. For the entire morning, Father New York sat in the confession pavilion and patiently solved all kinds of problems for the believers. It was not until noon that Father York came out of the church. At this moment, Father New York's expression was a little awkward because the 4 Directions Patrol had not arrived. After waiting for another hour, Father New York finally announced that the 4 Directions Patrol might stay in the neighboring Lian City for another day. He asked the believers to go back first and wait for his next notification. The hungry believers could only go back dispiritedly. Soon, the people inside and outside the church were all gone. Father New York and a few enthusiastic believers who stayed behind tidied up the inside and outside of the church. After all, so many people came and went, there would always be some dust and debris. Tang Yin saw that they still needed to tidy up for a while, so he left the church and went to the old farmer's place to have lunch. The old farmer naturally also just came back from the prayer meeting. Because he didn't have time, he didn't make the smoked rabbit meat. He just casually tidied up some food and dealt with it. During the meal, the old farmer kept thinking that it was a pity that the important person didn't come. After lunch, Tang Yin sneaked into the church again. At this time, everyone had already left. Father New York was taking an afternoon nap in the backyard. Tang Yin used the secret door in the window to gently open a gap. After confirming that Father New York was resting, he closed the window and walked around the church a few times. In the end, he stayed on the roof beam of the bishop's hall. He saw this place when he came this morning. Not only could he overlook the bishop's hall, but he could also see the outside through the hollow window on the roof. It could be said that he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. It had to be said that Tang Yin learned a lot through the assassin system. If it was in the past, even if he wanted to monitor, he wouldn't be able to find such a good position. Around 3 in the afternoon, Father New York woke up. After simply wiping his face, he locked the church door and walked into the village. After a while, he talked to the old people in the village as usual and preached the gospel. Tang Yin followed far behind. Looking at the satisfied smiles of the old people and the happy laughter from time to time, Tang Yin really felt that his monitoring behavior was despicable. Probably because he was worried that the inspector would suddenly come, Father New York didn't go to the surrounding villages today. 2 hours later, the sky was slightly dark. After shaking hands with a few old people, Father New York set off to return to the church. Tang Yin, who had been following him, suddenly froze. Because after leaving the old man's sight, Father New York quickly wiped his hands. The gentle expression on his face disappeared. His face was full of disgust, and he muttered a few words. From Tang Yin's angle, he could just see Father New York's lips. It was clearly cursing. Without waiting for Tang Yin to react to the scene in front of him, Father New York greeted the farmer woman who came to him after work. That warm smile was still there. There was no trace of the disgust from before. Tang Yin touched his nose. At this time, he was not sure whether what he saw was an illusion or not. With a doubtful heart, Tang Yin arrived at the church first. After hiding in the beam of the bishop's hall, Father New York opened the church door and walked in. At this time, Father New York's face no longer had a gentle smile. Until he walked into the living quarters in the backyard, his expressionless face had a bit of a ferocious expression. Tang Yin looked down at Father New York's expression from above. He quickly jumped down from the beam and went straight to the backyard. The light in Father New York's room was on, but strangely, Tang Yin didn't see any movement from the window. He also didn't hear any sound. It was as if the room was empty. Tang Yin gritted his teeth and took the risk to open the window through the secret door. The room was empty. Tang Yin was stunned. Although the sky was a bit dark, he dared to swear that Father New York had walked into the room. Tang Yin simply opened the window and quietly climbed into the room. The decoration in the room was almost exactly the same as when he entered in the morning. Was there a secret door? This was Tang Yin's first thought, and it was also the most likely assumption. If there was a secret door in this kind of room, it could only be underground. Tang Yin leaned over and carefully examined the ground. Finally, he found traces of movement at the bookcase. And the bottom of the bookcase was not directly in contact with the ground. Instead, it was wrapped with a layer of iron. Obviously, this was to increase the sliding force. Tang Yin stood beside the bookcase. With a little force, the entire bookcase was pushed open. A staircase leading down appeared in front of Tang Yin. At this time, Tang Yin knew that Father New York was definitely not simple. After all, no one would tear down the walls of his house and dig out the foundation of his house to make a cellar for fun. Tang Yin groped his way down the staircase. The entire staircase was in the shape of a spiral. After walking up dozens of flights of stairs, Tang Yin vaguely heard the sound of crazy laughter and tragic cries. The two voices mixed together and sounded very gloomy in this narrow tunnel. After going down the stairs, there was a corridor. The crying and laughter became clearer. Tang Yin saw a white light at the corner in front of him. The sound also came from there. Tang, and calmed his mind and groped his way to the corner. He carefully poked his head out. It was not a small space inside. It was especially bright because of the few torches on the wall. In the middle of the space, there was an iron pillar. The iron pillar was wrapped with black chains. The two ends of the chains were locked with two little girls who were not fully clothed. Cries and begging for mercy constantly came out from their mouths. At this time, Father New York no longer had a gentle appearance. His face was hideous and ugly. He took off his black robe and rolled up his white sleeves. He waved his long whip and whipped the two little girls. He let out a crazy laugh. Beg me again. Ha, please. Don't hit, sob sob. Don't hit. Do you still remember what I told you last night? Sob sob. I remember. You have to serve Lord Patrol Inspector well. Mary, you remember well. In order to reward you, I'll give you a few more whips. How? Sob sob. Struggle. Use all your strength to struggle. Ha. F***, this scum, I thought he was a good person. Seeing this, Tangen's eyes were about to split open. He was about to rush out. Ha. Don't worry. I won't leave any scars on your delicate skin. New York laughed crazily. He raised his hand, and two white lights shone on the two little girls. The blue and white whip marks on their bodies quickly disappeared in the white light. See, isn't it better now? Then let's start again. Don't hit anymore. The two little girls were obviously on the verge of a mental breakdown after being tortured in turns. The healing spell could only treat the physical body. It could not treat the mind. The two white lights made Tang completely awake. The environment here was bright, and there was no cover. The success rate of concealment was too low. If he went up like this, he might not be a match for this perverted New York. It was fine if he threw himself in, but if he did not save the two little girls, he was afraid that they would really have a mental breakdown. Tang regretted that he did not learn the killing techniques from the old butler. He only learned the unreliable crossbow. Tangen's mind turned, and an idea came to his mind. Tangen looked at the two little girls, gritted his teeth, and turned to run towards the stairs. At the stairs, Tang deliberately made some noise and then ran straight up. Who? A not very clear voice echoed in the secret passage. Tang naturally did not care. After running out of the secret passage, he quickly moved the bookcase back to its original position. After a quick observation, Tang concluded that he did not leave any traces and flashed out of the window. After leaving New York's room, Tang directly jumped out from the back of the church and hurriedly ran toward his forest hut. The forest was south of Little Rock Village. It only took about 10 minutes to go back and forth. P.S. Please recommend and add this to your collection. This book is already labeled A. Please rest assured. Chapter 7. At dusk, someone knocked on the door of Little Rock Village's church. A moment later, Father York in a black robe walked to the door. He saw a man wearing a flat hat and a black robe standing in the shadows outside the door. He had seen a lot of people dressed like this. Most of them were people who had done something dishonorable and came here to pray for God's forgiveness. At this time, the man opened his mouth to speak. His words matched York's judgment. Reverend Father, I'm sorry to disturb you so late at night. The sin in my heart has never stopped, so I can only come to you to confess. It's all right. The God of light is always here, and so are the servants of God. Father York opened the door and said gently. The man nodded to express his gratitude. He lowered his hat and entered the church. All right, you may begin. York sat down in the confession pavilion and said. The confession pavilion was actually a place similar to a sedan chair. There was a window in front of it to communicate with the outside world. The window was separated from the outside by a layer of black cloth. This was also to protect the believer's privacy. Father, I have sinned. Everyone in this world has sinned, but as long as you repent with sincerity, God will forgive you. It was the same old dialogue. Father York mechanically repeated the same words dozens of times a day. He was a little distracted. He was thinking about the sound from before. Did he hear it wrong? Or did a rat sneak into the secret passage? Then, Father, are you also sinful? Of course. I repent every day for not being able to spread God's grace better. Yerk answered in a dignified manner. The man outside breathed heavily. What? Are you ashamed of yourself in comparison? Yerk thought to himself. But if I want to sin now, I can't even control myself. Then pray sincerely and ask God to give you strength so that you can control yourself. The man outside was silent for a while. But I still want to know, if I really do sin, will God forgive me? If you truly repent, God will forgive you. Phew! Praise God. The man outside seemed to be relieved. Praise the Lord. New York stood up. All right, I've finally gotten rid of this baffling confessor. Should I go and rest first? Or should I continue the exciting thing that happened just now? It's better to train those two little stallions. That feeling is incomparably wonderful. Father, what's wrong? New York, who was still savoring the wonderful taste, paused and replied subconsciously. Thank you for the bread. What puff? The black robe of the man who came to confess fluttered, and a crossbow with an arrow already shot out from the hem of his robe. Then he quickly loaded the arrows, fired, puff, puff, puff. The thin wooden planks and black gauze on the front of the pavilion were quickly penetrated and torn apart by the crossbow bolts. For a moment, wood shavings flew everywhere, and muffled groans could be heard. Huff, huff, huff. After shooting a few arrows, the man panted heavily, looking very nervous. He adjusted the brim of his hat and wiped the sweat off his forehead. A pair of long and narrow eyes were revealed. It was Tang Yen. Tang Yen picked up the crossbow and opened the pavilion. New York's eyes were wide open, and his upper body was covered in blood. The fatal wound was on his chest, which he covered with his hands. The big hole there took away his life. God will forgive me for my sins. I don't know if your boss will forgive your sins. About 3,000 meters east of Little Rock Village, a group of knights wearing holy armor was advancing slowly. The reason why they were advancing slowly wasn't because their mounts weren't good. On the contrary, the horses they were riding were of a pure breed and were abnormally handsome. The thing that slowed them down was a luxurious carriage in the middle of the group. A small window on the side of the carriage was suddenly opened from the inside, and an old face full of wrinkles but in good spirits appeared. The knight waiting beside the carriage quickly approached. Buck, how much longer until we arrive? The knight didn't dare to be negligent and said respectfully, Lord Sessman, we will arrive at the church in Little Rock Village in about 15 minutes. This damn broken road? I hope it won't break my carriage. Buck speechlessly looked at the carriage that was moving at the speed of a turtle and said, Don't worry, Lord Sessman, your carriage isn't damaged at all. Damn it. It would be strange if it was damaged at this speed. That's good. Inside the carriage, Zeisman let out a sigh of relief and said, Tell me about the church in Little Rock Village. Yes, Lord Sessman. The knight called Buck seemed to have done a lot of homework. He said, The church in Little Rock Village has nearly 1,000 believers. The manager is a low-level clergyman, New York, who is in charge of Little Rock Village and the 4 farms around it. These 5 farms are the fiefdoms of a night. 5 farms, nearly 1,000 believers. This New York is quite a talent. Buck nodded in agreement and said, Last month, New York also applied for a promotion to his superiors and is currently undergoing an evaluation. Lord Sessman, do you want to? Let's go take a look first. If he's smart, we'll promote him. Buck, remind me when we arrive at the village entrance. I need to rest. Sigh, I'm getting old and my mind can't keep up. Buck hurriedly said, I'll remember that. Lord Sessman, you must be tired from the journey. Please take care of yourself. You're getting old? It's those 2 nuns who tortured you last night, isn't it? Sessman naturally couldn't hear Buck's ridicule. He nodded in satisfaction and was about to close the window of the carriage. At this moment, dang, dang, dang. Is this the sound of a church bell? Sessman said in surprise. This place was in the south of the empire, so there was no need for alarm bells like the towns in the north. If there was a melodious sound of a bell, it was undoubtedly the sound of a church bell. It should be. Judging from the sound, it should be coming from Little Rock Village. Sessman said angrily. What the hell is this New York doing? Why would he ring the bell at this time? The church bell naturally couldn't be rung for no reason. Normally, it would only be rung during the weekly prayer meeting or during a major religious celebration, such as the Day of God's Descent. Buck spread out his hands, indicating that he didn't understand either. Let's hurry up and see what's going on. Just as Sessman and the others were puzzled, the villagers of Little Rock Village were also looking at the church in the village in surprise. Most of them were followers of the Church of Light, so they naturally knew the meaning of the church bell. They had never heard of the bell being rung at this time. Dang, dang, dang. The stubborn sound of the bell didn't stop. The villagers looked at each other in dismay. They put down the things in their hands and walked toward the church. Little Rock Village was small, so the villagers who lived close to the church only needed to walk a few steps to reach the church entrance. At this moment, the sound of the bell suddenly stopped. Father York! Father York! The first person to reach the church entrance was a farmer's wife. She leaned against the church entrance and shouted inside. Unexpectedly, she didn't manage to shout twice before the half-closed church door was pushed open. The first thing that caught her eye was the church's vertical bell, but it was empty next to it. Is someone playing a prank? Father York? She shouted softly as she walked toward the church's main hall. Everyone here knew that New York's room was behind the church's main hall. The church's main door wasn't locked, so it was pushed open with a creak. Father York, what are you doing sitting on the ground? At this time, the sky was already dark, so the church's main hall was naturally even darker. However, the farmer's wife still saw a figure with his head lowered and his back against the podium, lying down facing the door. The figure didn't answer and seemed to be focused on something on the ground. The somewhat insensitive farmer's wife didn't notice anything strange at all. She took a few steps forward and was about to speak to Father York. An extremely horrified scream was heard, and some of the villagers who had just arrived at the church shuddered when they heard it. At the door of the church's main hall, the farmer's wife fell to the ground and pointed forward with a trembling finger. New York. Father York is dead. What? Everyone turned pale with fright and looked inside. Not long after, the church's main hall's lights were lit. Father York, who was wearing a black robe, was lying on the podium. There were a few transparent holes in his chest that were slowly bleeding. The holy light God pendant on his chest was already dyed red, and a large pool of blood spread on the ground. Father York, God, how could this be? Sob. Which bastard did this? I want to hang him immediately. There's something on the ground, and there's writing. Looking at New York's tragic death, the villagers were completely enraged. It should be said that New York's performance in Little Rock Village was really perfect. He successfully left the villagers with a sincere and kind impression. Now that such a good person was brutally killed, the villagers couldn't help but be angry. The crowd was enraged and kept cursing the murderer. At this time, some of the more attentive villagers saw the blood-stained writing next to New York's hand. That's a key. Is that the murderer's name? If you can read, quickly take a look. Some of the more impatient villagers called out. Move aside, let me. A farmer with a long beard squeezed in and identified. It says the truth is in the back room. The back room? That's Father York's bedroom. Could the murderer still be there? Let's go. A few of us stay and watch over New York's body. The rest go catch the murderer. The villagers took all kinds of tools and swarmed towards New York's bedroom. When they pushed open the door to New York's bedroom, it was empty, but they found a bookcase that had been moved away and a secret passage behind the wall. Why is there a secret passage in Father York's room? The villagers looked at each other suspiciously. Some of the bolder ones walked down the secret passage and soon found the two abused girls. Old John, isn't this your granddaughter? Wasn't she sent by Father York to the convent to cultivate? This seems to be Mary from the neighboring village. A few days ago, I even saw her parents. Yes, but didn't she say that Father York recommended her to the headquarters to be a nun? Why is she here? The two girls were stunned when they saw so many villagers come in. When they came to their senses, they cried and rushed to the crowd, crying about what happened to them. When the crowd returned to the bishop's hall and saw New York's body, they all had a complicated expression. The two girls cried and wanted to bite New York's body, but after being stopped by the crowd, they lay in the farmer's arms and sobbed. The two girls had been abused by New York for a long time. In shock and joy, they whimpered and fainted. For a moment, the bishop's hall became abnormally silent. They didn't expect York, who was usually kind and helpful, to be so dirty and despicable in secret. Moreover, New York was a priest of the God of Light, a servant of God who often preached the gospel and urged people to be good. Their faith collapsed. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. At this time, an old man walked out of the crowd. They were all villagers who saw each other frequently, so they naturally knew that this was old John. Ever since he heard his granddaughters crying in the secret passage, he had been in a daze. Old John walked in front of New York's body and looked at it silently. Suddenly, he spat a mouthful of thick phlegm at New York's face. Then, in the crowd's exclamation, he fell on his back. The crowd was in chaos again. Fortunately, someone saw that he wasn't normal and went forward to support his body. At this moment, another series of hurried footsteps could be heard. A young villager who hadn't been there before shouted happily, "Inspector Zeisman has arrived at the entrance of the village. Everyone, go and welcome him." Seeing that everyone was looking at him strangely, his voice became weaker and weaker. Finally, he stopped. "What's the situation?" Chapter 8. The bronze oil platform, the bean-sized sparks, the flickering light in the main hall of the church. Beside York's corpse stood an old man wearing a white robe with golden edges. If there was an experienced and knowledgeable person present, he would tell you that this white robe with golden edges was a robe that only the vice bishops of the Church of Light could wear. Sessman quietly looked at the corpse on the ground. Oh no. His wandering eyes showed that he wasn't paying attention to the dead guy. He was thinking about how many years it had been since he was scolded. Sessman was born in a noble family. He was sent to a monastery when he was young. Back then, the monastery was very strict, and he was beaten and scolded many times. Later, with the help of his family, his position in the Church of Light rose day by day. Finally, after many years of hard work, he was promoted from an ordinary clergyman to an archbishop. It could be said that ever since he became a clergyman, he had never been scolded in front of his face. But today, a group of farmers pointed at his nose and scolded him with spittle. This was originally just an ordinary inspection by a clergyman. When he got off the carriage at the entrance of the village, the situation was still normal. Those ignorant and backward villagers all looked at him with respect and admiration. He couldn't be more familiar with this kind of situation. At this time, all you had to do was walk up and talk to them, and these farmers would be grateful and respectful to you. Then, he saw a large group of people running towards him excitedly. Some of them didn't even wear shoes. Oh, what a group of devout believers. He remembered that he had walked up and said solemnly, "Devout believers, greetings. On behalf of the God of Light, I would like to extend my greetings to you. Greetings to your mother." His face was covered in spittle. Then, dozens of fingers pointed at his face and scolded him. All kinds of vulgarities were heard, and some shoes were flying towards him. At this time, he realized where the shoes of those barefooted people had gone. "Sir, this is the weapon that killed New York." Barker held a crossbow and said to Sessman, who was in a daze. Sessman stared at the crossbow in a daze. The material was ordinary. It seemed to be made of ordinary wood. The workmanship was rough. Most importantly, the arrowhead was not evenly cut. The entire crossbow looked more like a toy made by a child playing a war game. "What did you find?" Barker said, "Judging from New York's body temperature, he died within 10 minutes. The location of death was at the confession pavilion. The other party must have pretended to be a believer and shot him at close range." "Is that all?" This was not what Sessman wanted to hear. He did not care how the idiot on the ground died. He only wanted to confirm the identity of the assassin. They pretended to be believers and shot at close range with crossbows and arrows. That didn't mean anything. Barker said hesitantly, "Some brothers found slight traces on the wall in the backyard. Someone also left a secret door in New York's window. If it was left behind by an assassin, then the method is quite professional. Their profession was naturally those assassins who took people's lives and collected bounties. Sessman said sarcastically in a sharp voice, "Professional? Are you saying that an assassin came all the way here and used this toy to kill an ordinary member of the clergy? Is he so poor that he went crazy? Or is he just passing by to kill someone for fun?" Barker also knew that this result was a bit untenable. He could only say, "Then we can only start with the crossbow and investigate the hunters in the surrounding area." Sessman's voice became even sharper. "Oh? A hunter from a small village killed someone, and a team of Knights of Light couldn't find any useful clues. Are you trying to say that our Knights of Light are too useless?" It was even more untenable to say that it was the work of a hunter. Little Rock Village was located in the interior, and most of the villagers relied on the land for a living. There was a small forest to the south of the village. Even if there were some hunters, they could only set traps and catch pheasants. They were not very clever. Barker simply shut his mouth. Sessman fell into deep thought after ridiculing Barker. The Knights of Light were naturally not useless. In fact, their overall fighting ability was higher than that of the Knights of the Empire. They could not find any useful clues, which meant that the opponent was really a professional. There should be no problem with Barker's judgment. But which professional would be so careless? After all, the reward for killing a low-level member of the clergy like York would not exceed 1 gold coin. Was he really just passing by? The conflicted Sessman did not know that the professional they had guessed was vomiting in the forest not far from them. It had to be said that killing people and killing chickens and ducks were two different things. Before he made his move, Tang and kept telling himself that the opponent was a villain who deserved to be killed, and that he was enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. But after seeing York really die in front of him, his stomach still churned. He reluctantly took care of the scene and waited for the villagers to arrive. He hurriedly jumped out of the backyard and went straight to the forest, vomiting until he was dizzy. In the church, Sessman, who was deep in thought, suddenly said, York died just before we heard the bell?" "Yes. Don't you think that this is too much of a coincidence?" Barker's heart skipped a beat. "You mean?" Sessman seemed to have figured something out. He smiled and said, "Our itinerary is fixed. As long as someone is interested, they will be able to find out." We walked slowly, but as soon as we arrived at the outskirts of the village, the bell rang. "You mean someone deliberately let York die in front of us like this?" "Not only that," Sessman said coldly. "That idiot York is dead, but his exposed actions have tarnished the honor of the Church of Light. The people in this village will no longer believe in the God of Light. And if someone instigates the villagers to spread the news, that's too scary. This is a disaster." Sessman said coldly, "That's right. And what's worse is that this will also become a stain on our reputation. After all, I'm the inspector in charge of supervising the clergy in this area. And damn it, we're actually at the scene of the incident. Is someone trying to slander you? Damn it, who is this?" Barker finally understood what Sessman was thinking. He couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, people in high positions were not simple. And this way, it could be explained by professional means. After all, if someone did it on purpose, they would naturally hire professionals to do it, so as not to leave any flaws. It doesn't matter who it is. The key is, what should we do now? Barker was indeed smart. He immediately said, "How about we say that York died a long time ago, and someone from the wilderness cult disguised as him? The wilderness cult, the religion of the northern wilderness tribes. It was a natural enemy of the Temple of Light. When the believers of the two religions met, they would fight to the death." Sessman said non-committally, "That's a good idea, but it's a little tricky. However, the operation is difficult. Farmers are ignorant, but not all of them are fools. Then use a spiritual spell on the farmers and seal their memories. There will be repercussions. If there's a sealing spell, there'll naturally be a way to remove it. It'll be even worse." Barker spread out his hands and said, "I'm ignorant. I can't think of any good ideas." Sessman smiled and said, "Take your time. There'll always be a good idea. Sometimes we need to change our thinking. Just like how we deduce the identity of a murderer, we have to think deeper." Think deeper? Thinking deeper. Barker looked at the smiling Zeisman and suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be? Seeing the changing expressions on Barker's face, Sessman raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Oh, looks like you've thought of a good idea again. When I picked you as the Guardian Knight Captain, I praised you for being smart. Let me hear it." Barker opened his mouth and murmured, how about, looking at Sessman's bottomless eyes, Barker gritted his teeth and said, "Kill them all." Phew! After saying that, Barker suddenly felt a strange sense of relief. It was the same feeling he had when he was a child. In order to prove to his friends that he was manly enough, he pretended to be indifferent and killed the dog he had raised for many years. Sessman didn't say anything. He just smiled and patted Barker's shoulder. Barker bowed his head and expressed his gratitude. "Sir, the villagers have gathered at the entrance of the church. They want you to give them an explanation." A knight of light came in and reported. The cursing at the entrance grew louder and louder until it was deafening. Barker took a deep breath and said, "Guard the entrance. Don't let them in. Calm them down first. Tell them that we found some clues. After 10 minutes, we'll announce the situation to them. Yes. Also, after you've done all this, gather at the backyard of the church." Yes. The knight received the order and left. "Sir, you see, you've done well." Sessman smiled and said, "The Holy Light Night Hall is recruiting new blood. I have a spot here. After this inspection, you can try it out." Barker was overjoyed and said, "Thank you, sir." Holy Light Knights were the top knights of the Church of Light. Whether it was status or strength, they were the backbone of the church. And these knights were all produced by the Holy Light Night Hall. As long as they passed the training, they could become Holy Light Knights. "This is what you deserve." Immediately, Sessman took out a crystal that was emitting a strong white light and gave it to Barker. "Find a place to put it. Crystal of divine punishment." Barker was shocked. Sessman looked at the crystal reluctantly and said, "Yes, this is a crystal of divine punishment. This is the only one I've gotten in all these years. What a pity. You want to use this to destroy the village. This is the only way not to leave any traces. Also, tell your knight to shut his mouth. It's best to forget about this matter. Otherwise, you'll be the one in trouble." "Yes, Barker will always be loyal to Sir." 5 minutes later, under the pitch-black night sky, a white light suddenly fell from the sky and directly hit the small church. It was like a spark being thrown into a pile of gunpowder. The small church suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. The airwaves rolled in all directions and directly swallowed the whole village. South of the village, by the forest, Barker felt the strong wind blowing against his face and stared blankly at the scene in front of him. Zeisman furrowed his brows and said, "My carriage. Damn it, don't let me find out who set me up. Otherwise, I'll definitely send him to the gallows." Sessman's luxurious carriage was parked in front of the church. It was too conspicuous to move, so it could only be destroyed along with Little Rock Village. Barker's heart turned cold. More than 200 lives had been lost. But in Sessman's eyes, it wasn't even worth a carriage. The white light disappeared as quickly as it came. After a short while, the scene before him became peaceful again. But Little Rock Village no longer had any traces left. It had become a sunken piece of scorched earth. Sessman said, "Make a sacred tablet and send someone to explain the situation to the knights of this fief. I don't need to tell you the reason, right?" "Yes. Don't worry, sir." Chapter 9. Tang returned to the wooden house and entered the system space. This way, at least he wouldn't have to vomit in the real world. Ding! Congratulations to Assassin Tang In for completing the mission of killing New York. Mission difficulty, F. Completion evaluation, D. Experience gained, 200. Blood vitality, 150. Ding! Congratulations to Tang In for completing the Assassin certification mission. The system randomly rewards you with the skill, Heart like still water. As soon as Tang In stepped into the system space, a series of synthetic voice prompts appeared. The old butler said, "Congratulations, Assassin Tang In." Tang In said awkwardly, "I'm sorry. Yesterday It's okay, I don't mind." "In, thank you." Tang In nodded, then said dejectedly, "I didn't expect Father New York to be this kind of person." The old butler said, "The human heart is the most unpredictable. No one can completely understand another person. It's normal for you to be wrong." Tang In nodded with emotion. This matter really affected him deeply. Thinking of the old butler's words, he asked curiously, "You seem to think that New York wasn't a good person from the beginning? Let me correct you first. In my eyes, there is no distinction between good and bad people. He is a good person, and that won't be a reason for me not to kill him. He is a bad person, and that won't be an excuse for me to kill him." The old butler said lightly. After saying that, he waved his right hand and a screen appeared. It played all the scenes of Tang in meeting New York. There was the first time they met in a different world, and there were also a few times when Tang In accidentally saw them in the village. As I said before, I can see the same content as you. It's just that I can see it more carefully. For example, at this moment he is greeting the old farmer beside him, but in fact the focus of his eyes is on the buttocks of the girls passing by. Of course, for men, this is understandable. It is indeed more attractive than the old farmer. However, pay attention to the depths of his eyes and the curve of his mouth. That is too dangerous. It usually represents greed and possessiveness. Another example is this moment. The old butler kept zooming in and changing the angle to describe everything. Tang In listened in a daze. At this moment, the old butler was like a god in his eyes. Finally, the old butler said, "Do you understand? It doesn't matter if you don't understand. These are just some small tricks that can be used in battle. I will teach you one by one." Tang In's heart skipped a beat as he said, "If I learn this, won't I be able to see through others at a glance?" The old butler shook his head and said, "As I said earlier, the human heart is the most unpredictable. Perhaps some people had the same idea as New York, but he might not do it. Moreover, judging people by their eyes was something that would be noticed no matter where they went. It was very easy to train them. If you pay too much attention to this, you might be deceived by others' eyes." Tang In nodded, and then his stomach churned again. When he saw the image on the light screen, he couldn't help but think of York's death. "Are you okay?" Tang In said with a pale face. "It's okay." The old butler said, "Perhaps you should try Heart of Still Water." Heart of Still Water? Tang In's heart skipped a beat. This seemed to be the skill that the system had just given him. He hurriedly opened the assassin panel. Under the originally empty status skill tree, there was a skill. Heart of Still Water. Innate skill. Cannot be upgraded. Quickly restore calmness and become immune to most negative statuses. Skill lasts for 30 minutes. Cooldown time is 3 hours. Consumes 100 blood and chi points. Innate skill? Tang In saw this skill for the first time. The so-called innate skill refers to a skill that you don't need to learn. It can be used directly by consuming blood and chi points. Wait a minute. I don't need to learn? Then other skills need to be learned? Of course. Can I use it just by adding skill points? Skill points? The old butler frowned in surprise, and then said seriously, "Tang In, it's good that assassins can have a game mentality. But killing people is not a game. There are no skills without flaws. Can you imagine being nailed to death in the air by a crossbow after using a jumping attack skill?" I got it. How'd I use this skill?" Tang In knew that he had thought of things too simply, and quickly changed the topic awkwardly. "Just say it silently. Heart of Still Water." Instantly, he felt a cool sensation enveloping his whole body. Although his heart was still uncomfortable, his body no longer had the feeling of wanting to vomit. Phew! Tang In could not help but let out a long breath. The old butler said, "This is a temporary solution. It's better to find a way to get rid of the sequelae of killing people." Tang In quickly asked, "Then how should I get rid of it?" This varies from person to person. You can only ask yourself. Unfortunately, the omnipotent old butler did not give a definite answer this time. "Ask myself?" Tang In was dumbfounded. "Yes." The old butler nodded and said, "Assassins are a profession that walks on the edge of life and death. It's normal to have psychological problems. If there's pressure in your heart, it's naturally best to vent it out. But every assassin's personality and hobbies are different. Those who are more reclusive will lock themselves in a dark room and bleed. Those who have a better personality will do some exciting things, such as climbing rocks with their hands, racing crazily, going to bed nonstop, and so on. The most gentle ones are reading books, traveling, growing plants, playing music, and so on. Although you can use your so-called good person and bad person theory to support your belief in killing people. But to be honest, I'm not optimistic about this. My suggestion is that you find something you're interested in to do. Of course, it's best not to be too intense. You have to know that those reclusive assassins often commit suicide in the end. Actually, I have a better idea, Tang In suddenly said after hearing the old butler's words. Oh, just don't be an assassin, the old butler said, but you've already killed someone. That's different. You mean to say that York is not a human? To a certain extent, he is indeed not a human. What a ridiculous word game. Say whatever you want. Twain shrugged his shoulders lazily. After saying that, he followed the vines and crawled towards the old butler's wooden house. What are you doing? Resting. I have to strive to fall asleep within half an hour. The first time he killed someone gave Tang In a huge impact. Before entering the space, his scalp was numb. However, after using heart like still water on himself, his body and mind calmed down a lot. Tang In decided to take advantage of the half-hour duration of the skill to quickly fall asleep. Perhaps he would feel better after sleeping. I know, but you should go to your own wooden house. Please don't be so stingy. Okay, good night. What kind of joke is this? What if I vomit after going out for half an hour? That's my little house. Tang In quickly slipped into the wooden house and threw his body on an antique wooden bed. It was a quiet night. Perhaps it was the effect of heart like still water, or perhaps his heart was stronger than he imagined. Tang In smoothly fell asleep in a short period of time and spent the entire night dreamless. Sleep was the cheapest and healthiest way to heal. After a good night's sleep, Tang In instantly felt much better. Everything about the old butler's wooden house was good except for the fact that it didn't provide breakfast. At this moment, Tang In thought of the old farmer's smoked rabbit meat. However, at this time, the village must be in a mess because of York's death. The old farmer probably didn't have the mood to make rabbit meat anymore. He silently exited the system. Pushing open the simple wooden window, Tang In took a deep breath and the fresh morning air rushed into his face. Why do I feel like something is missing? That's right, it's the smoke from the kitchen. Tang In couldn't see Little Rock Village from his wooden house, but he could still see the rising smoke from the kitchen every morning from the north. Could it be that yesterday's incident had affected them so much that they didn't have the mood to cook? For some reason, Tang In suddenly felt a little uneasy in his heart. Let's go take a look first. Tang In quickly slid down the big tree. That's not right. I should be able to see the statue of the god of light on the roof of the church from here. That's not right. I should be able to see the mud wall of the farm from here. Tang In walked more and more hurriedly in the small forest, a bad feeling creeping into his heart. Boom! Finally, at the edge of the forest, Tang In's mind exploded and he staggered back a few steps. The originally peaceful and harmonious farm had disappeared and was replaced by a charred land. The mud house, the church, and the farmer had all disappeared. It was as if nothing had ever been here. Tang In's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he rushed to the charred land. This is all an illusion. It's all an illusion. It's all fake. The farm is still here. The villagers are still here. The most conspicuous thing in the charred land was a stone tablet emitting a white light in the middle. The location was where the church used to be. The inscription on the tablet said, "In the autumn of the 7th year of the god of light's calendar, God's might descended upon the world and spread his grace everywhere." At that time, the small stone village of the kingdom of Bran was suddenly controlled by demons, and 200 villagers turned into undead. Fortunately, the god's blessing allowed the light patrol to visit and lead 12 light knights to fight against the demons. After a bitter battle, the demons were finally defeated. The 200 demons were also purified and returned to the embrace of the god. Ulrich de Sessman. It was just an ordinary stone tablet, but the engravings on it were very clear. Some complex and mysterious runes were added around the tablet, which was probably the reason why it was emitting a white light. This was the Holy Spirit tablet of the Church of Light. If the later generations were to view this tablet, they would probably praise the god and rejoice that the demons were destroyed in time. Otherwise, the surrounding 100 miles would be filled with undead wreaking havoc, and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Of course, Tang In, who knew the situation, would never think so. F*CK. 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 Tang In knelt on the ground and slapped his mouth with both hands, falling into endless regret. He clearly heard New York say that the patrol would come. Why didn't he think of this situation? Why didn't he think of this situation? Evil souls undead. He was almost sure that all of this had something to do with Sessman. Tang In punched the Holy Spirit tablet. Bang! The surface of his fist cracked and blood flowed out. The heart-wrenching pain immediately cleared Tang In's mind. He quickly stood up and ran around the scorched earth. Then he entered the system space. Old butler, they're here," the old butler said from behind Tang In. Tang In grabbed the old butler. "You can find traces of them, right?" The old butler observed the light screen. "With this kind of power, it's hard to leave any traces. Besides, even if you find them, what can you do?" Tang In roared ferociously. "If I find them, I'll kill them. Your courage is commendable." The old butler gave a non-committal comment. After a while, the old butler said calmly, "I'm sorry, there are no clues. You deliberately didn't tell me." "Yes. No." Tang In obviously didn't believe this result. He stared into the old butler's eyes and said word by word, "Calm down, I'm not a god." The two of them stared at each other for a while. Tang In's face darkened and he exited the system. The old butler fixed the light screen on the road to the west of the scorched earth. After a while, he shook his head. I can't say. The light screen changed again. Tang In, who had exited the system, was now kneeling on the ground and punching the stone tablet again and again. Under the banging sounds, the pure white stone tablet was stained with blood. I hope this matter can bring some changes to you. Chapter 10. Crash. Looking at the broken stone tablet, Tang In put away the axe expressionlessly. This axe was given to him by the old farmer, but now was the only thing left in Little Rock Village. Tang In secretly swore that when he caught Sessman, he would first use this axe to break his bones one by one, then chop him to death. Tang In entered the assassin system and said expressionlessly, "I want to be an assassin." Tang In wasn't stupid. Just now, he was blinded by anger, so he was eager to kill Sessman. But when he smashed the stone tablet, he regained his senses. He knew that with his current strength, revenge was purely a pipe dream. Not to mention other things, just the scorched earth in front of him covered a larger area than some bomb explosions. If he wanted to increase his strength, the only thing he could rely on now was the assassin system. As for killing people, then he would just kill them. The old butler was pleased and said, "Okay, I want the strictest training. As you wish." Ding. Revenge mission activated. Target: kill Sessman. Mission time: no time limit. Under the old butler's suggestion, Tang In packed up his things, left the wooden house, and went east along the main road. After all, no one knew if Sessman's group would think of something and come back to take a look. If they found that the stone tablet was destroyed, even if they were stupid, they would know that something had happened. In the next few days, except for eating and sleeping, Tang In devoted all his time and energy to the system space. He absorbed all kinds of knowledge eagerly, including the disguise and killing skills that he insisted on not learning before. And because he said that he wanted the strictest training, he was now tortured in the system space. The old butler, who was wearing a white coat and holding a scalpel, said, "As an assassin, you must know every part of the human body like the back of your hand. Although this is a world that I don't understand, according to my observations these days, the human body hasn't changed. Next, I will take you to dissect various types of bodies. Tang, in the most fatal parts of the human body are the upper body. The temples, the glabella, the throat, the heart, and so on are the most important. However, these places are also the most heavily guarded. When these areas were not easy to target, the aorta was also a good choice. Here, take this thigh first. Tang trembled as he took the dismembered thigh. He kept telling himself, "It's fake, it's all fake. Everything in front of you is an illusion created by the old butler. Hold on, you're the man who's going to become the king of assassins." But the F*CK did have to be so realistic. It was so bloody. Look, this is the artery. They were all illusions. You just need to make a light cut, and the fountain will come out. It's all an illusion. Puff. Tang In, who was drenched by the fountain, retreated. About 500 words have been deleted from the list in consideration of the lighter readers. Sigh, what a pity. This is the era of cold weapons, so close combat weapons are essential. A dagger is an assassin's best friend. Next, I'll teach you how to hold a dagger. The old butler demonstrated the use of a forehand dagger and a backhand dagger in slow motion. Don't be dismissive. The correct posture of holding a dagger can ensure the dexterity and full strength of the dagger. Isn't this simple? Do you think I don't know how to copy a cat and draw a tiger? Tang imitated the old butler's hand gesture and held the dagger. The old butler. Are you sure you're holding it tightly? Tang nodded. The old butler reached out and waved his hand, and Tang In's dagger was in the old butler's hand. He took the opportunity to cut horizontally, and the dagger slid across his throat. Tang let out an ah as his body collapsed and reassembled a few meters away. You're already dead. Tang touched his throat with lingering fear and roared, "What are you doing?" The old butler said indifferently, "In the space, you're immortal. This is to deepen your impression. This is a friendly reminder. Next, you die once, and I'll give you pain ranging from level 1 to 9, depending on the situation. Believe me, the feeling is wonderful." At this point, the old butler revealed a rare smile. Of course, in Tang Un's heart. What a perverted smile. Okay, one more time. Are you sure you're holding it tightly? A hold. Twain let out a howl of anguish, and his figure once again collapsed. But this time, the pain went straight to the bottom of his heart. After Tang regained his body, he curled up and forced his tears back into his eyes. Despicable, you sneak attack. The severe pain made it difficult for Tang to speak. The old butler. Congratulations, you've begun to understand the mystery of an assassin. Are you kidding me? There's no such thing as a mystery. Despicable and sneak attack. The old butler said calmly and then hooked his finger. Okay, stand up like a man. That's just level 1 pain. Tang In's body trembled. Damn, this is only level 1 pain? Are you sure you're holding it tightly? Finally, after Tang enjoyed 3 rounds of level 1 pain, the old butler reluctantly nodded and approved of Tang Un's dagger holding posture. Okay, now that you know how to hold the dagger, the next step is to use it. The dagger is short. If it doesn't hit the vital parts, its power is limited. As for where the vital parts are, I've already taught you in the human body lesson. The dagger's attack methods are generally stabbing, cutting, lifting, flicking, and cutting. I'll demonstrate the next steps one by one. Your task today is to do each movement 1,000 times. Tang didn't sleep for a night. Maybe you think that waving the dagger 1,000 times is nothing. But the key point is the word qualified. The old butler demonstrated the dagger on the human body model and left the parameters. Those who didn't match the data were all unqualified. Tang Un's initial waving of the dagger was completely based on luck. Later, he gradually got the hang of it, and the passing rate kept increasing. His arm started to heat up, then it became sore, then numb, and finally completely numb. His mind also started to become muddled. In the end, he could only wave his arm mechanically. Waving the dagger, too light, waving the dagger, qualified. Waving the dagger, a little heavy, waving the dagger, qualified. Waving the dagger, qualified. Tang In, who was in a trance, didn't know that his passing rate of waving the dagger was the highest at this time. In the end, Tang In himself didn't know when he completed the target. He only heard the old butler say, "Done." He replied, "Oh." Then he fell to the ground and fainted. In the next few days, Tang In had to complete the waving of the dagger once a day while learning other skills. Finally, on the fourth day, Tang In couldn't stand the boring practice and proposed to learn how to use the dagger. The old butler looked at Tang In and said, "You're learning now." Tang In said gloomily, "I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the moves." "Oh, you've already mastered the basic usage of the dagger?" Looking at the old butler's calm eyes, Tang In nodded guiltily. Then let's use the basic dagger technique in actual combat." The old butler flipped his hand and showed a dagger. "You attack." Tang In held the dagger tightly and bent his arm to prepare to attack. Suddenly, he stopped and hesitated. "You're also immortal, right?" The old butler curled his lips. "I don't think there's a need to answer this question." His indifferent tone revealed his strong self-confidence. You're really good at pretending." Tang In cursed in his heart. He bent his arm and stabbed, aiming for the heart. Too light. The old butler blocked Tang In's stab. A weak attack. After being blocked, what awaits you is death. The old butler's dagger suddenly accelerated. Bang! Ugh! Needless to say, Tang In, who had reconstructed his body, once again tasted level 1 pain. Again, it had to be said that once you've experienced enough pain, you could get used to it. After Tang In cried out in pain, he stepped on the ground and stabbed the old butler's heart again. Too heavy. A faint voice sounded. The old butler simply circled behind Tang In. Killing is also an art. After mastering strength and speed, Tang In only felt a chill on his neck and seemed to hear the hissing sound of the wind in his ears. Blood spurted out from his throat like a thin curtain. It was really nice to hear. Ugh. The cry of pain sounded again. In an instant, he was awakened by the level 1 pain. The old butler clapped his hands, and the dagger disappeared without a trace. Continue practicing. Persevere, few. Persevere. In the space, Tang In was sweating profusely while carrying a 25 kilograms backpack. He was trudging through the desert with difficulty. Desert? That's right. It was the desert with the scorching sun. Tang In's goal today was to reach his destination within 3 hours. The old butler said that this was a method used by a certain country's special forces to train strength and endurance. But, damn it, where is this destination? Why do I feel like I'm going in circles? In fact, Tang In's feeling was not wrong. If one looked down from above, the path that Tang In walked could be drawn as an irregular oval. Looks like I need some motivation. The old butler touched his chin. Then, Tang In suddenly realized that there was an additional scorpion the size of a millstone behind him. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Old butler, you'll die a horrible death. The old butler held a sun umbrella in the desert and took a sip of iced wine. You're full of energy. Looks like one isn't enough. Then let's add a few more. With a wave of his hand, another 3 large scorpions pounced on Tang In the distance. Damn it, old butler, I was wrong. Chidian. Com welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian Originals. Chapter 11. Lion City was one of the southern city-states of the Brand Kingdom. It was backed by the Lanao River, which was known as the main economic artery of the Brand. It had convenient water and land transportation and developed economy and trade. Hence, it was known as the Pearl of the Southern Kingdom. Little Rock Village was about 100 miles to the west of Lion City. After Tang In left the forest, he focused on the system's training and didn't travel much. Lion City was supposed to take half a day by foot, but after 5 to 6 days, he was still floating in the wilderness. At this moment, the system gave him another mission. The mission was to find an assassin organization and join it. This was a necessary mission for an assassin, and it also had a duration of 72 hours. If he failed, his experience would be reduced to 0 for the first time, his vitality would be reduced to 0 for the second time, and his life would be gone for the third time. Due to the lack of information about the other world, the old butler couldn't give him any good advice about this mission and could only tell him to find a town as soon as possible. An assassin organization was closely related to money, so the probability of finding one in a town was higher. Tang En walked along the main road for 2 hours and saw a majestic city in the distance. Laiyin City. When he reached the city, Tang En was stunned when he saw the words on the city wall. Why did the name of the city sound so familiar? All right, New York once said that Sessman passed by here before coming to Little Rock Village. Looks like I'm going in the opposite direction from Sessman. Whatever, it's more important to improve my strength. I'll let him live for a few more days. Tang En touched his axe and said hatefully, "What, 10 copper coins to enter the city?" Tang En encountered a problem when he entered the city gate. "No, wait aside if you don't." The armed guard was expressionless. Tang En wasn't convinced. Didn't the carriage just pass by? The guard looked at him with disdain. "He's a noble. How can a country bumpkin with a rotten axe like you compare to him?" F***CK. Tang En walked aside gloomily. After staying in the other world for 10 days, Tang En only had enough to eat and wear in the wilderness. How could he have any money? Come back at night and climb over the city wall? Tang En thought for a moment and came up with an idea. However, when he saw the towering city walls made of large pieces of greenish-black rocks and the huge crossbow bolts that gleamed coldly on top of them, he rationally dismissed the idea. Move aside. Just as Tang En was thinking about how to enter the town, there was a commotion at the city gate. Looking up, it turned out that another luxurious carriage had passed by, and the cavalry guard were driving away the people who were queuing up. A carriage! Tang En pounded his palms and quickly squeezed into the crowd, approaching the carriage. At this time, the results of his recent training could be seen. Although the crowd was crowded, Tang En was like a fish in the water, twisting and turning. He did not stop moving forward at all. At this time, Tang En also discovered his ability. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. If I had this ability in my previous life, I would have been able to squeeze into any public bus. Tang En avoided the clamoring knights in front of him. He lowered his body and rushed out from the crowd that was constantly retreating. In an instant, he got under the carriage. After waiting for a few seconds, there was nothing abnormal. He exhaled softly. Haha, success. You want to stop a killer with a broken city gate? You're too naive. CIA, did you have fun today? Tang En was stunned. A magnetic male voice suddenly rang in his ears. It was the person in the carriage. Not bad. Thank you for the invitation, Vincent. The female voice sounded a little cold. But please call me Josiah or Miss Chloe, okay? The man said helplessly. All right, Josiah. You're still so sensitive. If I hurt you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not used to people who aren't my family calling me that. It's okay, I'll call you CIA openly one day. Hee, is that so? Tang En, who was standing outside the car, pursed his lips. Give up, kid. His tone was obviously heartless. However, this man obviously did not think so. He said confidently, yes, I'll definitely work hard. I know you like autumn orchids and blue roses. We've seen autumn orchids today. Blue roses won't bloom until next season. But don't worry, I've already instructed a farm to plant them. Without a doubt, the owner of this carriage was an aristocrat in Laiyin City. Therefore, the carriage did not stop at the city gate. It directly passed through the passageway and entered the city. Vincent, thank you for your kind intentions. However, the farm is used to produce food, not to grow flowers. It's okay, I don't mind. But the farmers will mind. Them? Why would they mind? Because they needed to eat and pay rent. Brother. Tang En sighed inwardly. Taking advantage of the traffic on the city road, he flipped over and got out from under the carriage. Tang En's luck was not bad. No one cared about the passerby who suddenly appeared on the street. As for the conversation just now, Tang En did not take it to heart. Although he felt sad for the farmers, he could not even protect himself now. Damn, where can I find an assassin organization? I can't just randomly ask someone. Tang and walked along the side of the road aimlessly. Lion City was known as the Little Pearl of the Southern Kingdom. The construction in the city was naturally not backward. At the very least, what Tang Yin saw at the city gate was not bad. Compared to the modern city before he transmigrated, although there were fewer trendy skyscrapers, there were all kinds of classical and beautiful buildings, which made Tang Yin feel very comfortable. The road paved with green bricks extended in all directions. The sound of horse hooves clattering on it could be heard. From time to time, there would be a few unknown statues erected on both sides of the road, making Tang Yin stop in his tracks. Don't misunderstand. Tang Yin did not specially go there to look at those open-minded and avant-garde female statues. Of course, even if he did, he would look at them with an artistic eye. For example, TSK, this is not bad. As expected, unlimited scenery is at the peak. Yo, this is realistic. It's just that this fresh flower is not placed in the right place. Sigh, this is a luxuriant grassland. What's the point of this fresh flower? There's no sense of beauty at all. It's a waste of art. Cough, cough. Business is more important. Business is more important. Tang and touched his chin. Perhaps I need to find someone to ask. The profession of an assassin, no matter where they were, was hidden. After all, they took people's money and took people's lives. It was indeed not easy to find them. But a dragon had its own way, and a mouse had its own way. Those who walked on the path of the underworld were usually very well informed. Although sometimes the accuracy could not be guaranteed, it was still a clue. It was not easy to find an assassin, but it was not difficult to find a local ruffian. Tang Yin decided to start from these people. The port in the southern part of Lion City was the most prosperous place in Lion City because of the Laitao River. It was also the main source of tax revenue. Such a port with an important economic and geographical location was naturally the focus of the work of the officials in Lion City. At least 3/5 of the guard in Lion City were stationed here all year round. The security officer of Lion City had once announced that no matter which part of the southern port was in chaos, their cavalry would arrive at the scene within half an hourglass, about 5 minutes. But just like a delicious cake, it would not only attract delicate knives and forks, it would also attract flies. The security of the southern port was the strictest in the entire city, but the dark forces there were also the most rampant. In the beginning, the security officers of Lion City did not care about these fleas. They just waved their hands and sent their elite cavalry to eliminate them. The results were good at first. They eliminated many dark forces. In order to show their determination, the security officers did not stop the gallows in the central square of Lion City on Sundays. But then, the dark forces counterattacked fiercely. The officials and cavalry in the city all suffered bloody revenge. In the houses of the officials and the streets patrolled by the cavalry, there were deaths every moment. That period of time was the darkest time in Lion City. Shouts and screams were heard in the streets and alleys. The air was filled with the smell of blood. The residents in the city locked their doors no matter day or night. They did not dare to go out. The chaos lasted for a whole month. In the end, no one knew what kind of agreement was reached. Both sides finally stopped fighting. Since then, the security of the southern port was still the strictest, but the dark forces in the southern port still existed. Both sides maintained peace on the surface. At a loading dock in the southern port, a middle-aged man wearing a triangular hat and a tattered coarse gown was hurriedly walking. The people around him could not help but look at him with disdain. Some people teased him even though they already knew the answer. "Gambler, it's noon and you're about to start work. Where are you going?" The middle-aged man did not care about the disdainful looks. He laughed and said, "I'm lucky today. I'm going to gamble for 10 minutes to try my luck." After he finished speaking, he did not wait for the man to reply and left in a hurry. It was as if he was afraid that he would lose his luck if he could not get to the casino quickly. The person who asked the question could not help but shake his head. This gambler will be killed by the people in the casino sooner or later. It was no wonder that everyone looked at him with disdain. This gambler was addicted to gambling. As long as he had a penny on him, he would go to the casino to try his luck. Throughout the year, he spent more time in the casino than at home. Even when his wife was sick, he was in the casino. In the end, his wife passed away. Anyone with a bit of humanity would have changed after this incident. But the gambler was not. After being depressed for a few days, he still went to the casino. Even the gangsters looked down on this kind of person. However, today, the gambler's good luck obviously could not last until he reached the casino, where he followed the shortcut and passed through a deep alley. He was directly grabbed by the neck and dragged into a corner. Before the gambler could start to shout, a bright axe was placed on his neck from behind. Don't kill me. Let's talk nicely. Is it the one-eyed boss? I have the money. I will pay it back. Shut up. I ask you answer. Do you understand? The gambler nodded like he was pounding garlic. Do you know where the killer organization is? There was no doubt that this person was Tang Yin. He wandered around the city for a long time and finally wandered to the southern port. He stared at the gambler who was despised by everyone. Killer organization? I've never heard of it. The axe tightened again. I've heard of it. Killer is to cut off hands. Cut off hands. Tangan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said coldly again, Are you kidding me? Killer is to kill people. Kill people? Killer organization. I really know it's the Thieves' Union. Tangan was stunned. He wanted to slap himself. Damn, this is a different world. How can there be killers? I played World of Warcraft in college for nothing. I even forgot about Thieves' address. Tangan took back the axe. Bluestone Avenue in the West District. Thank you. You're welcome. Do you have anything else to ask? Well, you just said that you have money. Now is the gambler's turn to want to slap himself. Yes, a little. How much is a little? 5, 6, 7 silver coins. There was a suffocating silence behind him. Gambler quickly said, In total, there are 18. Lend me 10 silver coins. I'll pay you back double by this time tomorrow. Tang In was really penniless now. All he had was an axe. Even if he wanted to be a pawn, no one would want it. This isn't just 10 silver coins? You really want to pay me back? Gambler's heart was bleeding. Damn it, 10 silver coins. His monthly salary was only 25 silver coins. Pay me back double? Even a devil wouldn't believe it. Is there anyone who would put an axe on someone else's neck to borrow money? However, he didn't have a choice now. If the other party wanted to use force, then all the 25 silver coins he had would be gone. Thinking of this, Gambler trembled as he counted 10 silver coins and handed it behind him. Of course I'll pay you back. How about this? This axe is very important to me. I'll leave it with you as collateral. I'll take it back in 3 days at the latest. However, listen to me clearly. If this axe is gone, I'll kill you. Tangan was, of course, really prepared to pay back the money. It's over. Hearing Tang Un's words, Gambler's heart turned cold. This guy is a veteran. If he pawns the axe with me, then it's hard to say that it's robbery. Even if I report him to the sheriff and catch him, he has an excuse to say that he sold it to me. I remember your appearance. Remember, take good care of this axe. The vexed gambler only felt a weight in his hand as an axe was placed in his hand. After a moment, Gambler carefully peeked behind him. There was no one behind him. There was no trace of anyone in the long alley. Bang! Gambler fiercely threw the axe on the wall. FCKU, you evil thief. I rob you of 10 silver coins. 10 silver coins. Damn it. I curse you to go to the gallows tomorrow. Then a series of slang words came out. It wasn't until Gambler had said all the slang words that he could think of that he stopped and took a deep breath. Phew. No, I have to go to the casino to earn back my losses. Thinking of the casino, Gambler's spirit suddenly came back a lot. He hurried out of this unlucky alley and ran toward the casino. After a while, Gambler wretchedly came back and picked up the axe on the ground. Damn it! Who knows if the stupid thief is telling the truth? I'll take it with me first and throw it away 3 days later. Chapter 12. Unlike what Tangan had imagined, the Thieves' Union was not built in a remote corner. In fact, its location was not bad, just on the side of the main road. The Union's emblem of two crossed daggers was very eye-catching, shining brightly under the sun. Tang and had already changed into a new set of attire. He was wearing a black hooded cloak with a black veil covering his face. Tangen had bought this from the grocery store next door. According to the shopkeeper, it was called the Hermit Cloak and cost 50 copper coins. It also came with a triangular face scarf. After buying the Hermit Cloak, Tang haggled with the shopkeeper. In the end, he spent 2 silver coins and 20 copper coins to buy what he really wanted, an iron dagger. This was the first dagger that Tang owned. Although it was of inferior quality and only cost 2 silver coins, Tang did not care. The old butler had taught him that even a thin piece of iron could be used as a killing weapon in the hands of an assassin. The assassin's rule was to familiarize himself with the weapon as soon as he got it. The dagger was about 7 inches long and had a single blade. The hilt was made of ordinary bakelite. Tang adapted to holding the dagger with his forehand and backhand. It was quite comfortable, but it was not as comfortable as the dagger in the system space. This was inevitable, because in the system space, the dagger that Tang held was customized according to his hand shape. Tang turned his hand and hid the dagger in his sleeve. It stopped at his forearm, near his elbow. When he needed to bend his arm and reach out, the dagger would come out like a snake. This technique was very cool. Tangen had learned it from the old butler. Because of this, his arm was covered in scars and looked terrible. It was also in the system space. If it was in the real world, Tang would not dare to learn it like this. After entering the main door, they arrived at the hall of the Thieves' Union. At this time, the hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Tang habitually observed his surroundings. The interior of the Thieves' Union was a little dark, in contrast to the open and above-board facade outside. However, this was also in line with Tang's first impression. Thieves were used to walking in the dark. The layout of the hall was relatively simple. There were more than 10 office windows similar to those found in modern banks. On one side of the hall, there were many small cubicles. Looking through the open door, there was only an ordinary table inside. On the table, there was a crystal spherical object. Tangen's attire was not eye-catching here because there were many people wearing hermit cloaks who brushed past him from time to time. Of course, the mainstream attire here was leather armor. Occasionally, there would be female thieves wearing light leather armor that revealed their exquisite curves. Compared to these slender female thieves, the male thieves of the same build were much skinnier and wretched. Unfortunately, there were a lot of male thieves of this build. Tangen's figure adhered to his usual principle of being ordinary. He was neither fat nor thin, just moderate. But here, Tang found a sense of majesty and might. After observing for a moment, Tang arrived in front of a window of the Thieves' Union. Behind the window was a young woman wearing a white uniform. The woman smiled and said, "Hello, how can I help you?" Her light and pleasant voice made people feel very comfortable. Tang also smiled and said, "I want to join the Thieves' Union." "Okay, the entrance fee is 5 silver coins." There's an entrance fee?" Tang was stunned for a moment, but he still took out 5 silver coins and handed it over. "Okay, please wait a moment." The woman took out a small crystal ball about 1 centimeter in diameter from behind and handed it to Tang and said, "Okay, Mr. Thief, this is your identification crystal ball." "That's it. 5 silver coins for a small crystal ball." Tang took the crystal ball and carefully observed it, but he still could not see anything. He could only ask, "What's this for?" "Mr. Thief, have you never seen this thing?" "Oh, no." The woman patiently explained, "This is called an identification crystal ball. It's a product of the combination of magic and alchemy. This crystal ball is now in its initial state. You need to take it to the compartment next door and place it on top of the Thieves' Union's crystal ball. This way, you can enter your information and accept various missions. Of course, you still need to come to me to receive the reward for completing the mission. As for the specific steps, the Thieves' Union's crystal ball has them. You can follow the instructions." Tang nodded to show that he understood. After thanking the woman, he left the window. A product of alchemy and magic. Tang looked at the crystal ball in the palm of his hand curiously. This was a field he had never heard of. Whatever, let's try it first. Tang found an empty compartment and quickly walked in, closing the door behind him. Right above the crystal ball that was the size of a head, Tang found a small round groove. Needless to say, Tang stuffed the identification crystal ball. He just got into it. Beep! The Thieves' Union's crystal ball made a soft sound and emitted a soft light. A nebula-shaped array appeared inside the crystal ball. Then, a line of small words appeared in the nebula. Because there is darkness, there are thieves. People who come out of the darkness truly understand the value of the light. After the words disappeared, the Thieves' Union's symbol with 2 daggers appeared. Interesting. Whether it was the image inside the crystal ball or the thief slogan, Tang felt that it was very interesting. At this time, words appeared in the crystal ball. Please enter the name of the identification crystal ball. How do I enter it? Tang was confused. At least give me a keyboard or something. The crystal ball naturally wouldn't answer Tang's question. However, Tang soon found that as his fingers slid on the surface of the crystal ball, the corresponding symbol appeared in the crystal ball. What the heck? It's a touchscreen. It's quite advanced. Tang was now more and more interested in alchemy and magic. With a thought, Tang entered killer. The name is available. Please enter the password. Password? Old Butler. Tang mischievously entered the old butler's name. Successfully established. Please properly store your identification crystal ball. Oh, it's quite humane. Tang smacked his lips. As the success prompt faded away, a square interface named Mission appeared in the crystal ball. The mission interface was mainly divided into 3 categories: treasure hunting, assassination, and others. Treasure hunting was needless to say. This was a job that all thieves were willing to do. The missions inside were basically related to treasures. Some were clients who gave out treasure maps to seek cooperation. Some specified that certain treasures needed to be found by thieves, and so on. The other mission interface was more ridiculous. All kinds of strange missions were endless. For example, stealing the underwear of the city lord's daughter, tracking and investigating a certain playboy noble. After Tang casually flipped through it, he focused his attention on the assassination mission column. He was now eager to improve his strength, but the old butler was limited by his current system level and couldn't teach advanced things. And if Tang wanted to improve his system level, he could only keep killing people. However, just as Tang clicked on the assassination mission, the interface indicated that Tang could only accept missions of his current level. After Tang clicked on his level, he found that he was now a level 1 assassin. He could only accept assassination missions with a reward of 1 to 5 gold coins. Completing a mission gave him a point. When he accumulated 10 points, he could level up and accept missions with a higher reward. Tang wasn't surprised by this setting. In fact, if a new assassin wanted to assassinate a big shot, that would be a joke. After Tang opened the level 1 assassination mission, he began to carefully search for the target. That's right, Tang was ready to make his move. Aside from improving the system's strength, Tang now needed these assassination bounties more. He was really poor now. The 10 silver coins he borrowed from Gambler. In just a moment, he was left with 2 silver coins and 30 copper coins. Tang heard the old farmer talk about the monetary system of this world. There were 3 kinds of currencies: gold, silver, and copper. The exchange rate was 1 gold coin equals 100 silver coins equals 10,000 copper coins. An ordinary civilian family could barely survive for a month with 10 silver coins. Tang had only bought the beginner thief equipment, and his funds were already stretched thin. What's more, tomorrow Tang still had to take 20 silver coins to redeem the old farmer's axe. Fortunately, there were a lot of level 1 assassination missions. Tang kept scrolling on the crystal ball and finally chose a mission to assassinate a villain. There was a simple explanation behind each mission. It would briefly introduce the identity of the mission target, the reward, and so on. This mission target, the guild crystal ball's description was as follows: mission number, ****** target. A small leader of an underground gang client's request. Kill reward. 5 gold coins. It was really concise. But a small leader of a gang shouldn't be a good person. Tang and finally chose to accept. Beep. Mission successfully received. The following is the target's detailed information. Target name, Bart. Nickname, Violent Bear. 7 feet tall, wide body, dark skin, face full of black beard. Small leader of the axe gang, accustomed to using a one-handed axe, often appears at South Harbor Pier 68. After completing the mission, please submit it promptly. The guild will investigate and confirm within a day. Looking at the prompt of successfully receiving the mission, Tang En's heart was a bit complicated. His journey as an assassin in another world had begun. He used to say that he wouldn't kill for money. Tang En shook his head, dispelling the thoughts in his mind. He looked around and directly entered the system space. Ding! Discovered an assassin organization in another world. Downloading information. Downloading successful. This information will be merged into the assassin system. Ding! Congratulations to Assassin Tang En for completing the mission of finding an assassin organization in another world. Mission difficulty F. Obtained experience. 100. Blood energy. 100. Chapter 13. In the afternoon, the ships on the Llano River poured into the South Harbor like carps crossing the river. The South Harbor's huge harbor was like a prehistoric monster, constantly swallowing and spitting out ships. However, it was obvious that this prehistoric monster's mouth was not big enough. There were still many ships densely lined up outside the harbor. Some small ships barged in recklessly, directly upgrading the congestion to a blockage. However, this situation usually did not last long, because there would soon be some disruptors. Some huge cargo ships, with the insignia of noble clans, relied on their huge bodies to rampage along the way. The small and medium-sized ships at the front of the line complained incessantly, cursing as they scattered like birds and beasts. The sailors on the huge ships looked at the small ships that were retreating in a sorry state and laughed loudly. After these disruptors sailed past, some nimble and lucky ships took advantage of the situation to enter the harbor. However, even if they entered the harbor, it was far from time to relax because they still had to rush to the docks to unload the goods. There were now more than 70 docks in the South Harbor, stretching for dozens of miles. It sounded like a lot, but the reality was that these docks unloaded goods 24/7, and there were still many fully loaded ships waiting. At the South Harbor's Pier 68, a ship full of fruits had just docked. A group of 7 or 8 tall and broad men surrounded it. The leader was a big man with dark skin and a black beard. The big man with the black beard shouted in a rough voice, "Ship owner, where is the ship owner?" When the fat ship owner saw these people surround him, he couldn't help but cry out bitterly. He then put on a smiling face and cupped his hands. "I am the ship owner. May I ask why you are looking for me? What is it? Something good. Something good? Damn it. What good could come from being targeted by these vicious and merciless scoundrels?" Without waiting for the fat merchant to speak, the big man with the black beard said, "Your ship has just arrived, so you must be looking for a porter to unload the goods. I have some people on hand, so they came to me. Don't you think this is a good thing?" The fat ship owner smiled. "How could I dare to invite you, gentlemen? Actually, I've already invited Hearing this, the big men beside the big man with the black beard loosened their clothes, and axe tattoos appeared on their chests. The black-bearded man raised his head and laughed. "Ha! You've already invited people? That's great. Call him over and let us open our eyes. I like to see who it is that refuses to give face to Violent Bear of the Axe Gang." The Axe Gang? The ship owner felt a chill in his heart. He often traveled this route and naturally knew some of the underground gangs in Lion City. Although the Axe Gang's name was a little lame, it was still considered a medium-sized gang in Lion City. There were a few hundred people in the gang, from the boss to the underlings. All of them used axes as their weapons. Their style of doing things was brutal. The fat ship owner wiped the sweat from his forehead, knowing that he couldn't avoid it today. He could only say, "Actually, what I want to say is that I was just about to ask everyone to help me unload the goods." What's your price? Haha, that's not a problem. I, Violent Bear, have always been straightforward. Then, 3 silver coins per trip will do what? 3 silver coins? This is robbery. The ship owner was both shocked and furious. It would take at least 1,000 trips to and fro to transport all the fruits. In other words, it would cost 30 gold coins just to unload the fruits. The heavens had pity on him. His profit from the shipment of fruits was only 100 gold coins. If he deducted the consumption of materials, the remuneration of the sailors, and the cost of the ship's maintenance, the net profit would only be 50 gold coins. But now, someone else just opened his mouth and wanted to take more than half of it. How could he not be angry? Violent Bear's eyes flashed fiercely. He said in a low voice, "Robbery? Damn it, you have to apologize. Otherwise, I'll chop you in half with my axe. Brothers earn money with their own strength. How is this fucking robbery?" The ship owner saw the fierce look in Violent Bear's eyes, and his heart trembled. But when he thought of giving up more than half of the profits, he was a little unwilling. He fell silent for a moment. "Oh, you're transporting fruits. The ship owner has good taste. These things are in high demand in this season." Violent Bear grabbed a fruit from the basket and took a few bites. "It's just that the storage time is too short. After 2 or 3 days, I'm afraid a lot of it will rot." "What do you think, ship owner?" This sentence made the fat ship owner completely disheartened. He knew that if he didn't agree to Violent Bear's request, it would be very difficult to unload this shipment of fruits. Fruits couldn't be stored for too long. They spoiled easily. Naturally, bad fruits couldn't be sold. The ship owner waved his hand weakly. "Then I'll have to trouble you guys." Violent Bear revealed a satisfied smile. "The ship owner is wise. Our boss always says that money is something that only the living need." Hee. The ship owner didn't have the heart to say anything more to Violent Bear. He just smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. "Done, let's go. Asan, go call the porter over to unload the goods." Violent Bear led the group of strong men down the ship complacently. "Okay," a strong man replied. "Hey, Violent Bear boss, isn't that the vice leader?" A middle-aged man walked over with his hands crossed and a smile on his face. Behind him were a few strong men with expressionless faces. "And it really is. They must be here to patrol. Let's go and show our faces." When Violent Bear and his group walked together, they were very eye-catching. The middle-aged man also saw them and nodded with a smile. Violent Bear lowered his head and walked forward to salute. "Hello, Vice Leader." "Good, good. You must be Violent Bear. How is it? Is the business at the docks good?" Violent Bear saw that the Vice Leader actually knew him. It's good. Didn't I just make a deal? And not bad. The docks are an important source of income for our gang. If you do it well, the gang won't mistreat you." Violent Bear felt his blood boil. He said loudly, "Yes, don't worry, Vice Leader. I will do my best to serve the gang." The Vice Leader smiled and said, Good. But Violent Bear, the docks are a bit sensitive, so you have to be careful. I heard that you crippled a sailor a few days ago." I just wanted to scare the ship owner, who knew that the sailor was so weak. He slipped up and, "Please forgive me, Vice Leader. It's all in the past. Besides, it's all for the gang. Why would I blame you? Since you can fight so well, how about this? Help me do something. Once you're done, you'll work for me." "Thank you, Vice Leader, for your promotion." "Vice Leader, who do you want to kill? I will do my best to complete it." Violent Bear's face was red, and he looked very excited. He knew that his chance to shine had come. If he grabbed this opportunity, his position in the gang would definitely rise. "Good, you're a man. That guy is a gambler. He owes us money and hasn't paid it back. I don't think he has the ability to pay it back. You should kill him and give the others a warning." "Vice Leader, don't worry. I'll kill him tonight." "Straightforward," the middle-aged man praised. Then he said to the person behind him, "Give 10 gold coins to Violent Bear. Violent Bear, after you're done, take the money and have fun with your brothers." Violent Bear took the 10 gold coins with trembling hands. "Thank you, Vice Leader." It was the first time Violent Bear had so much money. Although he had just earned 30 gold coins, that was the gang's money. It had nothing to do with him. He couldn't even touch it. There were people in charge of collecting the money. He only received a fixed monthly payment. At most, the gang would reward him a little more for his hard work. However, it had never exceeded 50 silver coins. The vice leader patted Violent Bear's shoulder to encourage him. After that, he walked away leisurely. When the vice leader had walked far away, the brawny man standing at the side quickly rushed over and congratulated Tyrannical Bear in a messy manner. Of course, their eyes were fixed on the 10 gold coins. "What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Am I, Violent Bear, such a person? Let's find that gambler first and kill him. Boss is wise. I want one with long legs. Boss is mighty. I want two." After the group of strong men got the promise, they surrounded Violent Bear and flattered him. The proud Violent Bear didn't notice that beside him, there was a young man with an ordinary face who was also staring at the gold coins. "I didn't expect to earn extra money from this mission. I've earned," this was Tang Yin. In fact, he had been monitoring Violent Bear for a while. However, he didn't act rashly. Under the old butler's teaching, Tang Yin knew that killing someone wasn't as simple as pulling the trigger in the modern world. That was just a miniature version of killing someone. There was still a lot of work to be done in the early stages, including collecting information on the target, analyzing the target's strength and habits, and then formulating the most suitable killing plan, choosing the scene, figuring out the situation, and planning the escape route. When an accident happened, how to quickly deal with it and judge it. These tasks were very tedious. Sometimes, even if you didn't do them, you could still complete the assassination smoothly. However, if you were to fail one day, it would definitely be because of these tasks. Tang Un was a person who cherished his life. At least, before he killed Sessman, he couldn't die. Therefore, he didn't mind spending a little more time to complete these tedious tasks in order to increase the success rate of the assassination. Since Violent Bear had made a promise to the vice leader, he naturally didn't dare to neglect it. Through the brothers in the gang who put money in, Violent Bear quickly confirmed the gambler's identity. "Oh, it's that gambler. This job is easy." Violent Bear really did know this gambler. In fact, it wasn't just him. The strong men around him all knew him. First, it was because this gambler also ate at the docks. Second, it was because this guy gambled to a certain extent. Many people talked about him in their conversations. He seems to be doing odd jobs at Pier 49. A strong man with a good memory even remembered where the gambler did odd jobs. Violent Bear called out, "Let's go and take a look." "Are we going to do it now?" "Idiot, of course we're going to do it. How can we do it at the docks? Last time, when I crippled that sailor, he didn't get caught at the scene and caused me a lot of trouble." Violent Bear and his men's scouting skills were undoubtedly low level. There were people coming and going at the docks, so they could definitely monitor their opponents openly. However, these strong men's cowardice would only attract more attention. Fortunately, the target of their surveillance, a skinny man wearing a triangular hat, didn't notice them. At this time, the skinny man was running quickly to the docks. He caught the rope that had just been thrown down from the ship and fixed it to the iron pole at the side. Then he connected the wooden plank bridge to the ship. After doing all this, the skinny man held his triangular hat and turned around to walk to the shore. Looking at the skinny man's face, Tang and opened his mouth and was a little stunned. "The heavens want you to die. It seems like I don't have to return the 20 silver coins." Chidian. Com welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian Originals. Chapter 14. That's right, Violent Bear's target was Tang Yin's creditor, Gambler, whom he had met at noon. At this time, Gambler did not know that he had been targeted. He was hurriedly moving things like baskets. He was thin and could not carry things with his shoulders or hands, so he could only do these light chores. After Violent Bear and the others inspected the place, they were immediately relieved. Violent Bear said on the spot, "You guys keep watch for me tonight. I'm going to kill him." "Gambler, you're on your own now." Tang Yin, who was pretending to be a passerby, sighed. He did not intend to save Gambler. Not to mention that they were not familiar with each other. There was no reason to save him. Even if Tang and had a conscience, he had to have the ability to save him. Tang and had been practicing his killing skills for the past few days. He was confident in a one-on-one fight, but with such a group of strong men surrounding him, there was a high chance that he would be in for a tragedy. The work at the dock was 24 hours a day. The workers naturally could not do that. They had to be assigned to a night shift or something. Gambler worked until the evening and then got off work. He did not say anything to anyone and left in a hurry. Tang and leisurely followed behind Wild Bear and continued to monitor him. At this direction, Tang's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Gambler would not be able to avoid this today, because in front of him was the place where he had intercepted Gambler at noon. The environment there was deep and complicated, and the alleys crisscrossed. It was really a good place to do shady things. Sure enough, when they passed by this place, Violent Bear and the others sped up and approached Gambler. Gambler heard the footsteps behind him and turned around. Seeing such a group of unfriendly people approaching, he knew that something was wrong. He screamed and ran forward. "Help, they're killing me. Stop. If you run again, I'll kill you." In such an environment, the strong men chasing him also let go of their hands and feet. They shouted loudly to scare Gambler. Their tone was very mocking. Asking the other party to stop in the middle of the chase was a very funny thing, not to mention that they were going to kill him. But it was undeniable that this trick was very useful for some people with poor psychological quality. For example, when Gambler heard the shouts behind him getting louder and louder, he felt that the other party had already caught up to him. Finally, after turning into an alley, he fell to the ground in a panic. This was a long and secluded alley. Under the cover of the night, one couldn't see the end of it. Violent Bear ordered his underlings to keep watch at the entrance of the alley and walked in with a sinister smile. Tell me, how will Boss Tyrannical Bear kill that Gambler? What else can we do? Just hack him to death. Not necessarily. With Boss's temper, he might just chop off that Gambler's head. Asan, what do you think? Asan, what are you looking at? Nothing. Just now, there seemed to be a black shadow running over the wall. Well, it should be the cats around here. All right, what did you say just now? In the alley, Wild Bear panted heavily. Huff, run. Why aren't you running anymore? Mother of Asterisk Cur, I chased him down 2 streets. Huff, it's a misunderstanding. Huff, Big Brother, did you get the wrong person? I don't know you. Gambler backed away on all 4s. Violent Bear laughed mockingly. Misunderstanding? I'm from the Axe Gang. Don't you think it's a misunderstanding? Axe Gang? Gambler's face changed greatly. Big Brother, we're on the same side. I'm very familiar with Boss One Eye. Nonsense. Boss One Eye is not for you to call me that. One Eye was the boss of the Axe Gang. When he just started his career, he was blinded in one eye when he was fighting someone. Therefore, people gave him the nickname One Eye. Yes, I'm wrong. Big Brother, please let me go. I'll pay back the money I owe you. I'll give you all the money I have. Gambler's face was covered in tears and snot. He trembled as he took out a few silver coins and more than 10 copper coins. You don't even have enough money to hire a priest to send you off. You'd better die peacefully. Remember, the one who killed you is Violent Bear the Axe Gang. Violent Bear's eyes were fierce and murderous. He was determined to kill Gambler to get to the top. How could he be moved by such a small amount of money? Gambler was desperate. He knew he couldn't escape death today. With his old arms and legs, how could he beat Violent Bear, who was as strong as an ox? However, even ants cherish their lives, not to mention humans. He trembled as he took out something from his bosom. It had a short wooden handle with a narrow blade and a wide body. It was the farm axe that Tang In had mortgaged. A axe. Violent Bear opened his eyes wide and said incredulously, "You want to play with an axe with me?" He suddenly burst into laughter. Violent Bear felt he was about to cry. "Ha, damn it. You want to play with an axe with me?" Ha! Violent Bear suddenly took out a single-handed, wide-backed, double-edged axe from his back. Look carefully. This is the real axe. Damn, this situation. Tang In, dressed in black, squatted on the wall gloomily. He had no doubt that if the wide-backed, double-edged axe hit the farm axe, the old farmer's axe would definitely be damaged. This was a situation he absolutely couldn't allow to happen. Sure enough, plans couldn't keep up with changes. However, Violent Bear was alone now, and in this kind of environment, it couldn't be said to be the worst situation. Quickly making up his mind, Tang In quietly slid behind Violent Bear along the wall. Just as the old butler said, Tang In was quite talented in hiding. At present, among the many assassination skills, his elementary stealth was the highest level. Violent Bear was still showing off his wide-backed, double-edged axe at this time. He didn't know that there was a death god standing behind him to take his life. However, help! Gambler, who was in despair, suddenly saw a man in black holding a dagger behind Violent Bear. He was ecstatic as he called out for help. Violent Bear subconsciously turned his head to look. Damn it! Tang, and had the urge to bang his head against the wall. He wasn't afraid of godlike enemies, but he was afraid of pigs. Bah, it was better not to insult pigs. Roar! Violent Bear saw a man in black holding a dagger suddenly appear behind him. Without thinking, he roared and chopped with his single-handed axe. A strong gust of wind blew and a white blade appeared. After calling for help, Gambler knew that he had messed up. He felt as if he had swallowed bitter medicine and regretted it. At this moment, he only hoped that the man in black was skilled and could defeat Violent Bear. However, Gambler instantly lost all hope because the man in black seemed to have been shocked by Violent Bear's roar. He stared blankly at the axe that was falling down. It's over, Chi! Clang! Violent Bear staggered 2 steps forward and the heavy axe fell to the ground. He covered his throat with both hands and made meaningless sounds. Blood spurted out between his 2 fingers. Gambler opened his mouth wide. He had only seen the man in black standing there in a daze. Suddenly, he appeared behind Wild Bear like a ghost, and a cold light flashed. Then it was over. Tang and lowered his head and looked at the dagger that had a curved blade. He shook his head. Violent Bear pounced too hard just now. As soon as the axe was thrown, Tang In knew that his chance had come. However, he was still too heavy. The dagger slashed on Violent Bear's throat and was directly broken. Don't worry, you have enough money. I will ask a priest to send you off. Why are you looking at me like that? Don't worry, you won't be able to use this money in heaven or hell anyway. Why don't you do a good deed and give it to me? If you don't say anything, I will take it that you agree. Don't blame me for being talkative. To be honest, I'm a little nervous, Tang In nagged as he took out 10 gold coins from Violent Bear's body. Violent Bear's throat was broken. This was no longer a problem of air leakage. Naturally, he couldn't answer Tang In. After covering his throat in vain for a moment, Violent Bear finally leaned against the wall in silence. Still not leaving? Do you want to learn how to play with axes with the rest of them? Tang In said to Gambler, unhappily. Stone Dragon Avenue, the main road of Lion City's South Harbor. Tang In stretched out his hand and said, axes? What axes? Gambler was short of breath from running so fast just now. It was obvious that he couldn't react. Nonsense, of course it's the axes I gave you as collateral. It's you, you bastard. It's you, Gambler laughed dryly and passed the axes to Tang In. Tang In's face darkened. He really wanted to kick this guy back to those strong men. Take it. What? Gold coins. Gambler hurriedly took the gold coins that Tang In threw over. Tang In said, Don't say that I didn't warn you. Violent Bear is dead. The Axe Gang won't let you go. You better take the money and leave Lion City now. Understood. I have a distant relative in Shanghai City. I will go to him now. That would be best. Thank you. May I know your name? I don't mean anything else. I just want to... Assassin. That's my code name. I will remember it. Then I will go first. Watching Gambler disappear into the night, Tang In quickly walked into the shadows. After a long time, Tang In leaned against the wall and took a few deep breaths. He shook his head. Heart like still water. That, asking for a collection and recommendation shouldn't be too much. Chapter 15. The 24-hour working mode at the docks created the prosperity of Southport, which also influenced the lifestyle of the people there. Southport was a good place for people who like to live a rich nightlife. These fights, gambling, wine, beauties, as long as you could afford it, you could enjoy everything here. Gradually, Southport became a city that never slept. At the end of Stone Dragon Avenue, near the docks, dim yellow crystal lamps were trying to illuminate this part of the road. Under these lamps, there were women in revealing clothes, standing in twos and threes. They called themselves nightingales. Of course, if someone called them a prostitute, they wouldn't talk back. Handsome, my service is very good. Little brother, look at my big breasts, aren't they big? All kinds of seductive voices were heard again, but this time it was because a young man was walking slowly from the distance. His face was ordinary, and his cheeks were a little pale. It seemed that he had just recovered from a serious illness. The only thing special about him was his long and narrow eyes. At this time, he was frowning, which made him a little attractive. Of course, whether he was good-looking or not had little to do with the nightingales. At most, he would be in a good mood when he was serving. The young man seemed to be stunned by these charming voices. He stopped and looked around. There's a chance. The nightingales exclaimed in their hearts and quickly surrounded him. Little brother, choose me. The young man's hand was stuffed into a ball of plump bosom. Handsome, don't believe her. Her place is collapsed, and it's not as elastic as mine. If you don't believe me, you can compare. Choose me. Choose me. Stop. The young man pulled his hand back and pointed casually. I choose her. The nightingales turned around and saw a woman in a short skirt who was squeezed out of the circle. She looked at the finger pointing at her with surprise. TSK. Men want women, not cows. I'm younger than you. I was young once. Besides, it's the same if the lights are turned off. The young man wiped his forehead and whispered, Damn, I don't even feel so much pressure when killing someone. What? The woman who was chosen by luck leaned over. Nothing. The young man looked at the woman leaning on him and felt a headache. What should I do? Handsome, what kind of service do you want? Service? Yes, there are two kinds, one for once and one for the whole night. That's right, this young man was Tang Yin. After seeing Gambler off, he couldn't help but retch. Tang Yin originally thought that after experiencing the incident with New York, he would become stronger. However, he did not expect that a dagger to slit the throat and a crossbow to kill were two completely different concepts. The feeling of killing a life with his own hands made him very uncomfortable. Overnight, Tang Yin said in a slightly hoarse voice. This answer obviously made the long-legged woman very excited. One had to know that the price of an overnight stay was 3 times more expensive than doing it once. However, not all men could do it more than 3 times, so there were not many who chose to do it for the night. When the long-legged woman thought that she wouldn't have to suffer from the cold like her sisters, her heart was filled with joy. I know where the hotel is. Let's go. After taking the key under the hotel owner's ambiguous gaze, Ting Yin and the long-legged woman stepped into the room. There was some simple furniture in the room, and the burgundy light was very ambiguous, as if a burgundy veil was draped over the room. This kind of room, recalling the look in the hotel owner's eyes just now, Tang Yin knew that the long-legged woman had something to do with this hotel. She probably brought customers here to earn a commission or something. Tang Yin didn't mind. After all, it didn't matter where they stayed. However, the burgundy color made Tang Yin frown. It reminded him of blood. Seeing that Tang Yin was standing at the entrance without moving, the woman asked, What's wrong? Tang Yin took a deep breath and exhaled deeply. Nothing. Then shall we begin? Why don't we take a shower first? The woman shrugged. Okay. Tang Yin was now more and more curious about magic and alchemy. He shook a fiery red crystal a few times and threw it into the water. A few minutes later, the water in the bucket was heated up. This was much more reliable than a solar water heater. After taking a shower, the two got into bed. Gulp. Tang Yin couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Finally, Lena's hands suddenly lifted up, trembling like 2 winter sweet proudly standing in the wind on the sparkling snow. Under the burgundy light, the winter sweet at the top was as red as blood. F***CK, this annoying light. Tang Yin buried his head and panted while reaching out to touch the light crystal switch. Click! The button was hit, and a scream and a muffled groan sounded almost at the same time and then disappeared. In the room, the burgundy light flickered and reflected around the room, like layers of red waves rolling, quite psychedelic. But in Tang Yin's eyes, it was clearly a bloody wave. F***CK. Tang Yin carefully put his finger under Lena's nose and neck. After a moment, he let out a long sigh. Then, Tang Yin took the crystal light at the bedside with a pale face. The design of the desk lamp, but the light bulb was replaced with a crystal that looked like half a glass of red wine. There were 3 buttons on the chassis below. Click! The flickering burgundy light disappeared and the room returned to darkness. Click! The still burgundy light. Click! The burgundy light began to flicker. As the red liquid in the crystal rolled, it created all kinds of romantic wave effects in the room. Damned alchemy. Looking at Lena, who was motionless on the bed, Tang Yin cursed fiercely. Just now, he mistakenly pressed the flashing light button, and a wave of blood appeared in front of him. He subconsciously raised his hand and pinched Lena's ear, making Lena faint. From this reaction, Tang Yin's recent hard work was very praiseworthy. However, looking at his hand, he was now only afraid. If he had pinched Lena's throat just now, phew. Shaking his head, Tang Yin pulled up the quilt and covered Lena's body. Dragging a chair, Tang Yin secretly called out the killer system. The space returned to the original appearance of the hall, but there was a towering tree in the middle of the hall. On the tree was the old butler's exquisite wooden house. Hey, why are you here at this time? The old butler obviously did not expect Tang Yin to come. He walked out of the wooden house in his pajamas. Tang Yin looked at the old butler's attire in surprise. Old butler, you also need a rest? Nonsense, what else could it be? Do you think I'm intelligent, NPC? Are you not? Then you are? You don't need to know now. The old butler looked at Tang Yin suspiciously. Instant shot. After saying that, Tang Yin held his head and said in a muffled voice, I don't dare to imagine what would happen if I really killed Lena. Old butler, this is still a psychological problem. I can't help you. However, if you're strong enough to control it freely, this won't happen. I see, old butler. Okay, I'm going to rest. What are you going to do tonight? Of course, I'm going to stay here for a night. Don't worry, I won't complain about your bedboard, Chidian. Calm welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian Originals. Chapter 16. The next morning, Lena woke up in the dazzling sunlight. She lazily stretched and opened her eyes in a daze. Lena couldn't help but touch the area below her left ear. It was a little painful. What's going on? After a moment, Lena finally understood the situation. She hurriedly turned around to look at her side. There was no one. She jumped out of bed barefoot and ran into the bathroom. There was also no one. She scratched her fluffy hair. No way. He looks so honest, but he dares to play this trick with me. Running away after eating? Hey, what's that? Before Lena could get angry, the things on the table attracted her attention. Those things were shining brightly under the sunlight. Gold coins. Lena cried out in surprise, quickly picking up the gold coins on the table. There were a total of 5 gold coins. The brilliant color, the national emblem of the Brand Kingdom, held in the palm of her hand, there was still a little warmth from the sun. Lena finally believed that she was holding 5 gold coins. She then thought of who had left these gold coins behind, and her anger towards Twain was instantly washed away. It should be known that Nightingale's price was not high. Even if it was a rare young woman like her, it would cost at most 2 silver coins. If it was for a night, it would cost 6 silver coins, and even if it was 5 silver coins, it would still be possible. But now she actually got 5 gold coins, which was her usual income for half a year. Tang Yin naturally didn't know about this situation. Last night, Lena didn't tell him the price, and it was his first time paying for a night, plus he even pinched the other person until she fainted. Feeling ashamed, he kept 5 gold coins. Tang Yin knew that this price was definitely enough. After all, it was the price to kill a person. Since then, Tang Yin's first paying for a night ended, and the result was that he lost 5 gold coins and didn't get anything. A complete loss. Well, let's not talk about how excited Lena was in the room. Let's turn the camera back to Tang Yin. At this moment, Tang Yin was standing in front of the Bolton Institute in Lion City. The Bolton Academy was located in the northern city district of Lion City. It was the only comprehensive academy in Lion City. It taught magic, dou qi, alchemy, military affairs, noble etiquette, and other subjects. They contributed a large number of military and administrative talents to the Brand Kingdom. Of course, Tang Yin wasn't here to be a student. Besides, it wasn't the school's enrollment season yet. What he had his eyes on was the library here. The old butler urgently needed a large amount of information from the other world to perfect the killer system. Otherwise, there would be a lot of assassin training that could not be carried out. For example, the poison mastery in the assassin's techniques introduced how to configure and use poison. However, most poisons came from various plants and animals, and the system was a blank slate in this aspect, so it was impossible to combine poisons. After confirming the mission at the Thieves' Union early in the morning, he asked around and found out that the biggest library in Lion City was the Bolton Academy. The Bolton Academy wasn't like other night academies that had a closed management system. Therefore, Tang Yin was able to sneak in easily. After asking a few students, he successfully found the library. The library was a small building with 3 floors. When he stepped inside, he saw rows of bookshelves with neatly arranged books. There was also a kind of tranquility unique to a library. Tang Yin had a clear goal. He started from the innermost bookshelf and picked up the first book. He held it with his left hand and quickly flipped from the first page to the next page with his right hand. It only took him a few seconds to flip through a few hundred pages of books. Then he picked up the next book. Naturally, he couldn't see anything when he flipped through the pages at such a fast speed. At most, he would feel that there were dense words flashing before his eyes. However, the system could ding. Recording of the landscape of the Shiza continent has been completed. Ding. Recording of the Orc tribe's religious worship has been completed. Books after books were continuously recorded into the system. What Tang Yin had to do was to pick up the books, look at them with his eyes, and then flip through them. Hearing the ding-ding sound in his ears, Tang Yin was filled with emotions. If there was such a system before I transmigrated, Tsinghua University and Peking University would be crying and begging me to go there. Sigh, walala. Tang Yin quickly swept through every row of bookshelves. On average, he swept through 10 books per minute. The books on the first floor were mainly about history, geography, and etiquette. There were also some books about magic and dou qi mixed in. However, they were all general principles and the like. At first glance, it was obvious that they were just general things. Just as Tang Yin had just swept through a book of poetry and was about to pick up another book, a pair of tender and slender hands picked up the book first. Tang Yin turned his head and suddenly felt his eyes light up. The girl in front of him had soft golden brown hair. Her clear and bright face had a slightly heroic spirit. The smile on her lips made people feel comfortable and had a bit of a luxurious aura. Classmate, are you looking for a book? Tang Yin was stunned for a moment. And yes, tell me the name of the book. I might know it. I saw that you found this book from the first row of bookshelves. I think it's about the farm. Farm? In free farm mode? Yes, this book. Tang Yin nodded in agreement. He just casually mentioned it. And there really was a book about farming. The girl blinked her limpid eyes and said, but that's a forbidden book. Damn, do you have to be so accurate? You can't be so unlucky. But I also like this book very much. I just read it a few days ago. The point of view in it is very interesting. Returning the land to the farmers and letting them cultivate freely will not only allow both sides to obtain what they need, but also produce more products. Do you think this is true? It should be true. Why? Planting things for myself is definitely different from planting things for others. Twain answered without even thinking about it. That's right. I'm planting something for myself. The woman seemed to be deep in thought. However, she immediately came back to her senses and looked at Tang Yin with a clear light in her eyes. She elegantly bowed and said, "Hello, classmate. Can we get to know each other? My name is Josiah. CIA. Cough, cough. Josiah. Hello, my name is Tang Yin." So, it was her. No wonder her voice was a little familiar. This was the second time Tang Yin heard this name. The last time was when he hitched a ride at the city gate yesterday. "This book isn't here. I'll bring it to you next time." Thank you. "You're welcome. Then I won't disturb you. See you next time." Goodbye. Tang and didn't take this short interlude to heart. He continued with his big plan of sweeping books. In the next few days, Tang and spent most of his time in the library. During this time, he went to the Thieves' Guild to receive the reward for gold coins and 50 silver coins. The guild received 1/10 of the commission. When he returned to the assassin's space, the system prompted him to complete the mission. The mission difficulty was F, and the completion evaluation was C. According to the old butler, the evaluation of C was already very high, probably because Tang Yin's slash was really clean. Of course, if he killed Gambler without leaving any traces, the evaluation might be even higher. In the end, he received 150 experience and 200 blood chi. Tang Yin's current total experience was 475, and his blood chi was 450. The total experience needed to upgrade the novice assassin system was 500 points, which meant that Tang Yin only needed to get 25 more experience to reach the standard. When that time came, he could complete the upgrade mission and upgrade the system. Tang Yin couldn't wait to upgrade the system. Seeing that he still needed a little more experience, he quickly accepted another mission. This time, it wasn't to kill people. After all, he only needed 25 experience. The mission was to follow a baron and find out where his mistress was. Tang Yin was now reading in the morning, following in the afternoon, and training at night. His life was very regular. There was no progress in the following mission. Maybe the baron noticed something, so he just dealt with his business and attended parties every day. If there was a slight surprise, it would be Josiah. Ever since their encounter in the library that day, Josiah would greet Tang, and every time she came to the library and chat. Tang naturally saw that Josiah's identity wasn't ordinary. Every time the two of them chatted, passers-by would look at them in surprise. But what really surprised Tang was that Josiah, who was obviously a noble lady, had a slightly strange way of thinking. From their conversation, Tang could clearly feel that she didn't care about the aristocratic system. On the contrary, she was very concerned about the lives of the commoners. Although some of her ideas were more extreme and childish, it was surprising that a noble could think like that. Tang usually didn't pay much attention to her when he chatted with her, saying whatever came to his mind. It had to be said that Tang Yin's thoughts in the future had a great impact on Josiah. Every time Tang Yin casually said a few words, she would think for a long time. Gradually, the frequency of Josiah coming over became more and more frequent. Tang Yin did not mind. Although it was a little disruptive to his reading progress, he could take it as a break to chat with such a pleasing beauty. Chapter 17. Are you interested in taxes? No. On this day, when Tang Yin was sweeping the books, Josiah came to the library to chat with him again. But you have the Empire's tax regulations in your hands. I'm just casually flipping through them. Josiah blinked and said, "Oh, but this book is just for show. There are more than 50 types of taxes in it, but there are close to 100 types of taxes in Rhine City." "I see. I think we should hold a hearing or something to discuss about taxes." "Hearing? It's to choose some taxpayers to discuss. This will make it seem more democratic." Josiah's eyes obviously lit up. "Oh, democracy, this is a good word. Does it mean that the people are free to make decisions?" The meaning of this word is broad. I can't explain it clearly in a short time. You should understand it yourself." Tang Yin had an unfathomable look on his face. "F***, you fool me too much. How do you want me to answer you? Since I was young, I've always brought my notes into the examination hall for my ideological and political exams." "Yes, I know what you mean. You'll understand it better if you comprehend it yourself, right?" "Yes. That was why you had to find someone smart to talk to." When you couldn't continue the conversation, the other party would fill in the gaps on their own. Josiah didn't suspect anything and said seriously, "Thank you, Tang. I've really benefited a lot from talking to you. The day before yesterday, you said you weren't from this school. I'm very curious. What do you do? Your thoughts are so deep. Even the teachers in the school can't compare to you." Tangen was stunned. His mind worked quickly. I, I sent people to another place." Josiah frowned and thought. "Sent people to another place. Captain? Coachman? Coachman. Yes, reading 10,000 books and traveling 10,000 miles." Tang and secretly sighed in relief. Reading 10,000 books and traveling 10,000 miles. I've learned something again. Tang, you're really insightful. Josiah looked sincerely impressed. It's okay. Then what do you do? Are you a student? Tangen laughed dryly and quickly changed the topic. Yeah, don't look down on me. I'm still a beginner mage. Magician. Tangen's heart skipped a beat. That's amazing. I'm actually quite curious about magic. However, there don't seem to be many books here. The important magic books are all on the second floor. Usually, only teachers can go there. I can go in, but I can't bring you along. Josiah said embarrassedly. Is that so? It's okay. I'm just curious. You could just explain it to me briefly. Tang had a rare opportunity to learn more about magic. Naturally, he did not want to miss it. Josiah, that's not a problem. You've given me a lot of advice these days. I'm still thinking of how to repay you. He paused for a moment before continuing. There are magic elements around us at all times. As for magicians, wait a minute. What's a magical element? Haven't you heard of magical elements? All right, then I'll tell you from the beginning. Josiah was undoubtedly a qualified teacher. After a few more hours of detailed explanation, Tang finally had a preliminary understanding of magic in another world. According to the words of the other world, the air here contained large amounts of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and other magical elements. If someone could sense this element, then, congratulations, they had the potential to become a magician. Then, through meditation, you could guide these magical elements into your body. After gathering a certain amount of magical elements in your body, you could use specific incantations and gestures to cast magic. In summary, magic did not sound difficult to learn. But first, you had to understand the current situation. Out of 10,000 people, there were only 10 or so people who could sense the magical elements. The probability was almost 1 in 1,000. And after crossing the first threshold, you had to be able to smoothly guide the magical elements into your body. The probability of this was higher, about 1 in 2. In general, out of 10,000 people, there were only 5 people who could truly become high-level mages. It was precisely because there were so few mages that these 5 or 6 people who were selected, regardless of their background, would have a bright future. Any country or noble would treat them with the greatest sincerity. If a high-level mage was willing to work for any power and build a mage tower in their territory, then, for the time that the mage existed, this power would have another layer of strong protection. It could be said that there was absolutely no problem in blessing a few generations. Take Josiah, for example. She was born in a small, noble family. The family's management was not good. By her father's generation, the family's decline was inevitable. If there were no accidents in the next generation, her family's noble title would also be taken back by the empire. But ever since Josiah was proven to have the potential to become a mage and successfully became a beginner water-type mage, the various families of Rhine City's noble families came to her. All the great clans in Rhine City extended olive branches one after another. Her clan's status rose rapidly, and she had now become a rising star in Rhine City's aristocratic circle. And the reason why mages were so valued was because of the powerful power of magic. According to Josiah, if a great mage was given enough distance and time, he could destroy 100-man cavalry with a wave of his hand. Of course, great magician wasn't the highest level of magician. In this world, magicians were divided into 8 levels: apprentice magician, beginner magician, intermediate magician, advanced magician, great magician, archmage, great magician, and saint magician. Other than magic, Tang and also took the opportunity to understand battle aura from Josiah. Josiah's understanding of battle aura was not as systematic as that of magic. She only knew that there were many warriors who cultivated battle aura. Battle aura was stimulated through continuous training of the body. If one succeeded in learning it, when they reached the earth level, they would be able to draw on external power and use it for themselves. The power of battle aura was also extraordinary. It had an explosive power. If it was at a close distance, mages would not dare to underestimate it. Battle aura was the same as magic. It was also divided into 8 levels: apprentice warrior, beginner warrior, intermediate warrior, advanced warrior, earth level martial master, sky level martial master, heaven level martial master, and martial saint. Finally, Josiah also compared mages and warriors. Generally speaking, in the early stages, mages of the same level had a great advantage over warriors. When mages reached the intermediate level, they could hold up a magic shield, and the warrior's close-range threat would be weakened. This advantage would be even greater. Warriors had to reach the advanced level to be able to use battle aura as a long-range attack. And advanced mages of the same level could already use the flight spell. After reaching a certain height, warriors could only be targets. The real threat of warriors to mages was at the sky level. Warriors at this level could stand in the air. In a fight with mages, they would not be at an obvious disadvantage. Overall, mages had more obvious advantages. Of course, mages must remember that it was best not to let warriors get close to them. After listening to Josiah's explanation, Tang Un's heart was cold. The various killing techniques he had learned now were targeted at ordinary people. He didn't know if these killing techniques would be effective in the face of warriors and mages. Even if it was effective, it would probably be discounted. So, what would he rely on to kill Sessman? Tang was lost in thought. "Hi, Josiah. So you're here. It took me a while to find you." A handsome young man in fine clothes came from the entrance of the library. "Hi, Vincent." Compared to Vincent's enthusiasm, Josiah seemed a little dull. "Hey, this is—" Vincent saw Tang in next to Josiah. His eyes flashed, and he asked with a smile. "Tang in." Although it was easy to see that the smile was fake, but for the sake of hitching a ride, Tang in still responded politely. "Oh, hello, Tang in. My name is Delk Vincent. Just call me Vincent." Josiah. "Vincent, why are you looking for me?" "It's nothing. I'm here to invite you to lunch. You guys go ahead. I still have something to do, so I won't disturb you." Tang in nodded to the two of them and left the library. Tang in wasn't in a hurry to leave the academy. He found a remote stone chair and sat down, secretly praising the killer system. In the space, the originally empty hall was now filled with rows of antique bookshelves. The old butler was lying on a rattan chair with a pair of reading glasses, reading a book attentively. Next to him was a small red clay teapot that contained the fragrance of tea. Seeing Tang in come in, the old butler covered the book on the wooden table next to him, picked up the teapot, and took a sip of tea. He glanced at it casually. "Book of Bards." Tang in was confused. He couldn't associate the old butler, who was proficient in killing techniques, with a poet. However, he didn't have time to think about these problems now. He anxiously said, "Old butler, did you hear what Josiah said just now?" "I heard it. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Tang in frowned and said, "Isn't it obvious? The power of magic and qi is too strong. Even if I'm proficient in all the killing techniques, it's useless. You can't ask me to stab a mage with a shield with a dagger." The old butler put down the teapot unhurriedly and said, "I thought there was a problem. You underestimate the system too much. After you level up, everything will be clear." "Really? Will I have this kind of power after I level up?" It can't be internal strength, right? 9 Yang Divine Art? 9 Sutra? Anyway, as long as it's not the Sunflower Manual, anything is fine. I'm not greedy." The old butler's eyes twitched. "You read too many fantasy novels. If you have time, read more poetry books to cultivate your mind. Speaking of which, there's so many books. Can you finish reading them? Tang and looked at the rows of bookshelves. This was the result of his hard work for the past few days. The old butler said indifferently, "If you're referring to the text content, then I've finished reading them." Huh? Tang In was shocked and instantly rolled his eyes. "You just bragging. I haven't seen you turn a page in a poetry book for half a day. How can you finish reading so many books? Every time the system enters a book, the text inside will be sent to me immediately. However, it's just text. You have to know that some text not only narrates things, but also contains deep meaning. It needs to be carefully tasted. Like poetry books? Yes. All right. Hurry up and find a way to complete the mission. Don't disturb me while I'm reading." After saying that, the old butler waved his hand and kicked Tang In out of the system. Chapter 18. How many women does a man need to be satisfied? This was a question that sounded despicable, but it was a very practical question. The Brand Kingdom, or even the entire Shiza continent, did not have a rule that a man could only marry one woman. Only the Church of Light's teachings said that a husband must be faithful. Although this was a borderline rule, it had successfully won them a large number of female believers. The illusory teachings naturally could not absolutely restrict a man's thoughts. Just like a woman's famous saying, once a man is aroused, he becomes immoral. Obviously, the middle-aged baron that Tang In was tailing was aroused, and he was not careful enough. It was probably noticed by his wife, which led to Tang An's tailing mission. There were no clues a few days ago, and Tang In was not in a hurry at that time. He believed that as long as this man had a mistress, it would be exposed sooner or later. A cat that had had an affair would not be able to eat vegetarian food for long. But today, after he found out from the old butler that the upgraded system's power was comparable to magic in Do Chi, he could not hold it in anymore. He decided to give up on waiting and take the initiative to attack. Thus, the balding middle-aged noble sadly found out that his beloved carriage had a problem. After driving for a while, the entire carriage fell apart, and he rolled out of the carriage in a sorry state, his wig falling to the side. Then, when the coachman helped him through a building, he was splashed with cold water. Unfortunately, it was late autumn. Although the sun was shining, the cold wind was even stronger. He stood under the building, shivering, and did not recover for a long time. He was like a drenched chicken whose feathers had all fallen off. Men were also human, and when they were sad and frustrated, they also needed to be comforted. Without a doubt, this middle-aged noble was extremely frustrated. Then who would he look for to comfort him? A friend, a priest, or a mistress? Of course, it would be fine as long as it was not his old wife. Thus, Tang In was satisfied to see the middle-aged noble calling for a carriage and driving towards a direction that he had not been to for the past few days. The roads in Lion City were wide, and the traffic was smooth. Logically speaking, a carriage should be very fast, and tailing it was extremely difficult. However, there were a lot of people in Lion City. Carriages and pedestrians intertwined on the roads. The middle-aged noble was not riding in the carriage with the clan emblem on it, so the ordinary carriage would not give way to him, causing it to slow down. Tang In followed behind at a leisurely pace. These few days of stalking had made him very familiar with the surrounding terrain. From time to time, he would take shortcuts and go around to the front of the carriage. Tang In furrowed his brows and turned to enter a roadside clothing store. After walking around a few times, he exited the shop and entered a nearby weapon shop. By the time Tang In came out of the back door of a jewelry store, his clothes had changed and he was wearing a flat-brimmed hat. When Tang In returned to the opposite door of the jewelry store, he saw two people in green clothes looking into the jewelry store. As expected, he was being followed. Tang In frowned. He had not been in Lion City for long. The only people he had offended was the Axe Gang. However, the key was that when he killed Wild Bear, he had covered his face the entire time. Even if they had caught the gambler, they should not have found him. In that case, there was only one person who could be the culprit. No way. It was the first time they met, and they gave him such a big gift before Tang could do anything. The carriage from afar had already approached. The mission is important, but leveling up is even more important. Count yourselves lucky this time. Ignoring the two clumsy stalkers, Tang followed the carriage again. The carriage turned left and right and finally arrived at the West District of Lion City. It stopped in front of a rather exquisite house. One must know that this noble's house was in the noble residential area in the East District. In order to track this carriage, Tang had to cross almost half of Lion City. Damn it, you better be looking for a lover. Otherwise, I swear you will spend the night in the dirtiest corner of Lion City. Tang whose legs were weak from running, said hatefully. The middle-aged noble got down from the carriage and looked around vigilantly. Then, he went forward and knocked on the door. In reality, this action was completely meaningless. Even if Tang passed by him, he would not pay attention to Tang. Soon, the door opened a crack, and the middle-aged noble squeezed in impatiently. In a flash, Tang saw a seductive woman with a good figure. It was a chance. Tang was secretly delighted. He knew that his trip today would not be in vain. There was a woman. This meant that there was a problem. However, it was better to see for himself. Tang circled around the house without making a sound, and in the end, he naturally chose to enter from the backyard. The person who entered from the front door was a robber. It was still broad daylight, and the effect of concealment was not good. However, he did not have to be so particular when dealing with ordinary people. Tang found that most of the houses in the other world had courtyards. The only difference was whether the decorations were luxurious or not. For example, the villagers of Little Rock Village mostly used mud walls to enclose a piece of land in their backyard. After Tang sneaked in, he threw out a rope and hung it on the balcony on the second floor. When he poked his head out, damn, it was broad daylight. No matter what, he had to close the curtains. Perhaps the middle-aged noble had been bored for the past few days. Therefore, he could not wait to carry out the great task of reproducing humans. After Tang observed for a while, he exclaimed that humans had a shocking consensus in this aspect. All kinds of familiar postures appeared in front of his eyes. After smacking his lips and sighing, Tang jumped down from the balcony. The next task was to send this address to the Thieves' Union. The client would come and confirm it. The system would only recognize the completion of the mission after Tang and receive the gold coins. Therefore, he could not accept the upgrade mission from the system yet. The Thieves' Union happened to be in the West District of Lion City. Tang naturally confirmed the mission on his way there. Although it was not yet night time, Tang would not waste any time. He prepared to return to the hotel where he was temporarily staying and enter the system space to continue his training. However, when Tang approached his hotel, he stopped in his tracks. He pulled down the brim of his hat and turned into a small path at the side. As the hotel was located in a remote area, there were not many guests coming and going. The boss behind the counter was dozing off on the table weakly. Everything was the hotel's original appearance, but Tang could still smell a dangerous aura from it. Sure enough, after careful observation, Tang saw a few men wearing green undergarments in the corner of the outer perimeter of the hotel. Damn, there was no end to this. These people were dressed exactly the same as the people Tang found outside the jewelry store. All right, I like to see which eyes are so sharp to spy on an assassin. Tang's face was gloomy as he retreated into the darkness. At this moment, the roles of the prey and the hunter were switched. P.S. These two chapters will be published together. Recently, I've been busy with many things, and I'm in a foreign land. My time online is limited. Fortunately, I still have some manuscripts. Let's not talk about the specifics. It's suspected that I'm trying to gain sympathy. I can only say that 8 or 9 out of 10 things in life are not as you wish. And the last thing I'm used to is begging to be added and recommended. It's not easy to write. It's not easy to be new. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.